leaflet, which I agree with Councillor Nettle, it was a really lovely leaflet and very well explained. And it's disappointing to hear that we can't do more about that with the Royal Mail. We'll have to try again another time. This is only the beginning of the consultation process, which was agreed between all parties of this council. So when we have survey responses in from residents, that will form part of the discussion into what the budget will look like next year and help us to see what residents are really thinking about as their priorities, whether it is our grounds maintenance team, whether it's our communities work, whether it's our events, etc. We know that, the budget continues to be a really hard piece of work for all of us. Nobody wants to increase our precept on our residents willy-nilly. It's something we all take very, very carefully. Something to note, I think, is that live streaming of our meetings is now up and going properly. I think that's a really important step forward for the council in terms of transparency and visibility and accessibility for our residents. I hope people have enjoyed that and looked into it. Discussions about the Wiltshire local plan have begun. I attended the planning meeting about that, and it was good to see so many residents taking part in that. We have a neighbouring parishes meeting this Thursday, and that will be the focus of that discussion as well, with the neighbouring parishes and what they think about the local plan. So I look forward to discussing that with you as we go forwards. And the Place partnership last month particularly focused on tourism for Salisbury and what that might look like going forward. It's going to be a little bit of a thorny issue, I think, but certainly the council and Joe's team are batting for Salisbury to be important and independent and its unique self. Again, touching on our change of clerk, that's been a huge focus for the leaders over the past month or so. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but may I just put on record my personal thanks and administration's thanks for her commitment and hard work for the last few years and her particular support for this administration.
Anybody else? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on one of Victoria's points about the consultation in the Market Square, I think I did 3 sessions out of 4, and 2 things came across quite strongly. Firstly, residents, hardly any got the difference between Wiltshire Council and the City Council. So most of the public, almost to a man, to a woman, whatever, they didn't know there was a difference. So to get that message out is going to take an extremely large amount of effort and an extremely long time if we ever manage to do it. And the second thing that came across was when we had the ping pong balls in the boxes, we said, so what do you think the council should be doing more of? And they went, we should be doing more of parks and open spaces. And we said, fantastic. What would you like to do less of then? And they all went, you mean we've got to choose? And I said, yeah, you do. The other choices, of course, are put your taxes up. And they went, oh, we don't want to do that, obviously. But it just made people sit up and think a little bit about the decisions and choices that have to be made, because they just didn't think about that. They just thought, oh, we'll just spend the money. Fine. So just 2 interesting things that came out of that bit on the Market Square. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, agenda number 9, referral of minutes. Are we all happy to take it in one block and seeing the dates? Events and Markets and Grant Committee on 17th of July, Planning and Development on 24th of July, the Finance and Governance on 31st of July, and Planning and Development on 21st of August. Yes, Councillor Tom Corbyn.
So we can't do the 21st of August minutes yet because we haven't had those ratified yet.
Okay, noted. Rest of it is okay. Are we all content? Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Staffing change. So I believe, Annie, you will be.
Thank you, Chairman. As councillors will be aware, I have formally submitted my resignation to the leaders of the council. I have accepted as a position as the Chief Executive of the Smaller Authorities Audit Appointments. The SAAA, a national body, is a sector-led limited company appointed by the government to procure, appoint and manage external auditors to the small authorities in England. My last day in office will be the 21st of September. The council has appointed an interim city clerk. This will be Joanna Wood, who is currently the council's business and communications manager. She starts as interim alongside me today for a handover period. A cross-party working group has been established to oversee the appointment of the permanent clerk. The council should also note the temporary appointment of Kalpesh Patel as the RFO. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for the update. We'll, as a chairman, I certainly would want to thank you for what you have done over the years. You have been since the formation of the Salisbury City Council as well. And I think similar to all the other councillors would like to say a few words. So if I'd like to open it to the floor, if anybody wishes to say something, Councillor Nettle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Annie, congratulations. It's been a pleasure to have worked as a leader with you, as both as in opposition and as the leader of this council. And I know that it's going to be our loss and somebody else's gain. That your experience, and I've seen you go from well, deputy clerk all the way to this current position. Certainly enjoyed working with you. Strategically, some of your ideas have been absolutely what we're now delivering, and so it's just been a pleasure. And thank you for all that you've done for this council.
Yeah. Councillor Hawking.
Yeah, thank you. And just to echo my thanks also for all the effort and stuff that you've done for the council. This is my sort of third tour, so I'm 10 years in of my dealings with you, and I freely admit we haven't always quite seen eye to eye. And there's one particularly anecdotal statement which will live with me forever, which we were having a discussion about the use of the container down at the skate park. And then there was all sorts of stuff going on, and me and Annie did not quite agree on the way forward. And she looked at me and she said, "We cannot have rogue councillors like you, Councillor Hocking, just going round doing what they like." And I thought, just you wait. But no, that's the one comment. Never forget that. Great stuff. Thank you, Annie. Cheers.
Anybody else say anything? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Victoria.
Just to close then, on behalf of the council, I know you don't want a fuss, and it's not a fuss, but just a little something on behalf of the councillors.
Oh, bravo.
Thank you. That was very thoughtful. Right, agenda 11, the bid. We have some presentation from Robin McGowan, and I believe this is something that we have to make a decision at the end. You want to put the microphone on?
Yep. Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Just wait for a second for the screen to load there. But while we're doing that, can I just offer my congratulations as well to Annie and Joes. We've enjoyed very much working with them over the last few years. So hopefully we'll continue those relationships, but best of luck, Annie. So good evening, councillors, and thank you for taking the time to allow us to talk to you this evening. Just got a few slides about where we are with Salisbury bid and its time in its reballot process. If we just go to the next slide, please. So just going to cover off a few points around. Some of you work with us regularly, some of you may know less about the bid, so we'll just cover off some of the sort of key actions of the bid, some of the achievements to date, and how we go through the renewal ballot, because it is an electoral process there. I should start off by saying I'm Robin McGann. For those that don't know me, I'm the Chief Executive, and to my right is Susie. Do you want to introduce yourself, Susie?
Yeah, I'm Susie Mason. I'm a director of the bid, and I own Casafina in the High Street.
So thank you, Susie, for coming on this evening as well. The next slide will just give you a bit of background to bids more generally. So the first business improvement district was set up in 2005, so quite a few years ago now. And there's over 330 bids across the country. Many of our neighbouring towns and cities, Winchester, Bath, Bournemouth, Southampton, all have business improvement districts operating. Quite a lot of businesses across the country involved. All bids go through a cycle of re-voting, reballoting. So every 5 years is a reballot. And the typical success rate's about 90% for a reballot for a bid. And typically what a bid's main role is that business community to ensure that there's a coordinated approach to businesses in a defined geographical area there. And we've seen quite a change over those sort of 10, 15 years with what bids tend to deliver. Oh, I'll just wait for those technical issues to resolve.
It's because you didn't share the donut earlier.
We're just going to use the big. We'll just use the big screen.
Yeah, that's it. Keep focused on that big screen. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So in Salisbury, we have just under 500. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
So it's just over 500 businesses in the city centre that pay a levy to the bid. And we have an annual income of about 330,000 from those businesses. We do bring in additional income streams through partnership working, through grants, both locally and nationally there. We have about 40% of the businesses are retail, around 20% hospitality, and about 20% professional services there. And as you know, in Salisbury, we have a strong wealth of independent businesses, and around 40% of our businesses are independent, be that through the sectors above there. Our largest single annual levy is just under £10,000, and our smallest levy is £180. So it's quite a diverse. It's based on the business rating system. So the bigger a business premise, the larger levy they pay each year. We're governed by a voluntary board of 12 directors across all those sectors and all Salisbury-based businesses there. Next slide, please. Appreciate you can't see this slide, and I'll send you more information to follow, but just really some of the things that we've been delivering over the last 10 years now, coming to the end of the 10 years. So as you know, we launched Experience Salisbury back in June 21 in partnership with Salisbury Council and other city stakeholders. It's the main sort of channel that we use for all the communications to the people that live and visit in the city. We have about 20,000 followers across Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and that's just after 2 years, so that's growing quite rapidly. We have about 58,000 page views on the website, and over 1,000 events have been uploaded in the last 2 years. And one of the main parts of that website is the What's On guide for Salisbury, to try and reach everybody with what's going on in the city, where you can find out information, making sure it's reacting to you there. Lots of other activities. We send out a What's On guide. We do a Christmas guide in partnership with yourselves and City Council. Lots of other pieces of collateral to make sure, again, we try and reach all the residents and visitors of the city there. We've just produced a new city map that the Information Centre, I know, are giving out many of the summer period there. So that's going down really well with hotels and people that just want to know, you know, they've arrived in Salisbury, how do they get around? What should they see? What are the key sites there? We also do quite a lot of work on crime reduction initiatives. So again, we work you'll hear this phrase quite regularly, but we work in partnership with yourselves on CCTV funding, city centre security officer funding, managing the radio system. So there are pieces of work that we get involved in, either with the businesses being directly involved and or funding some of those schemes as well. We capture quite a lot of city data. You'll hear footfall, and you know, what is the footfall in Salisbury? So we capture that through some cameras that have been in place since 2015, and they've been really instrumental at times in helping make sure that the actual effect of the major incidents in Salisbury have been captured by the footfall, that, you know, how that's affected the footfall of the city. As you know, you hear people comparing how Salisbury and places are since 2019. Pre-COVID, and of course now it's really interesting how places are changing post-COVID into 2023 and 24. We also collect sales, so we collect sales data as well as footfall data. So we do have quite a lot of sort of local intelligence, so we can benchmark that against other cities such as Winchester, Shrewsbury, Canterbury, other places there. Next slide, please. So in terms of the bids ballot, term one of the bid was 2014 to 2019. And at the end of that term, we went to the ballot box, and we had a turnout of 66% with 90% voting yes. We're aiming to try and do something similar this term. So term two we're currently in ends in 2024. We've done quite a lot of consultation with businesses earlier in the year to develop the business plan. We had over 50% responses to consultation. We've met all 4 of the City Council group leaders and key officers and had some various discussions about budgets and priorities. And then we have the ballot itself, and the ballot's a postal ballot. So every business, or what we call hereditament, that's expected to pay a levy will get a ballot, which is a vote yes or no, and that's through the postal system. It's managed by Wiltshire Council, and the Civico Electrical Services actually do the electrical work behind the scenes there. So all businesses will have a copy of the business plan by the end of September, and then the ballot will be received by early October with a 28-day. So the ballot result itself then is on Friday, the 3rd of November. So it's quite a tight timeline that we work to, but it's also quite an old-fashioned way of receiving a ballot through the post and posting it back. Go to the next slide, please. So in terms of our priorities moving into the next 5 years, assuming that the bid's re-elected, we'll look at 3 key areas really. The city centre experience. So what does that mean? What does that look like for people? What do people want to see more of? What do businesses need to be looking at? How did they evolve into the sort of latter part of the post-COVID era that we're entering into? And you see that we're sort of, making our modern medieval city a vibrant destination of choice for residents and tourists alike. Influence. How do we constructively influence activities by either locally or regionally in terms of what goes on, what happens, how do we become and make sure that businesses' voices are heard, but in a constructive manner, so that we look at not just for individual businesses, but what do areas of the city, sectors of the city need to see and do? Is it business friendly, the policies that come through? And then with any place, we need to look at the basics and make sure that wherever we can support how things are delivered across security, safety, cleansing, all those activities that Salisbury City Council and Salisbury Bid work a lot on those. So we must make sure that that's paramount going forwards, because there's an expectation that that's a good service that continues to be delivered. Last couple of slides, please. Busy slide here, but just some of the things that we're involved in, have been involved in, will continue. You'll see the quote on the left there from the Managing Director of Bradbeers, who again we've been working closely about the reopening of Bradbeers this October, who we've been really trying to support and encourage and help, and I think his quote sort of says it all there about our involvement on that. Other projects within that will carry on as before, and there'll be some new projects that will deliver into the new term as again reacting to the business needs. Next slide, please. So really sort of in summary, at the moment, we already do quite a lot of collaborative working. So if you look at some of the areas I've put on the screen, which are where Salisbury City Council and Salisbury Bid joint fund activities, you'll see there's about over £130,000 of business money alongside £130,000 of residents funds that go into projects that we jointly deliver. And really that budget is then grown from other partner investments, from Arts Council through to National Lottery and other fundings that we come through. So it's really key that we try and continue that sort of efficiency of funding that we do, and how we make sure we get the best for our money there. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned the ballot period. So from Salisbury City Council's perspective, you will have 5 votes out of the 480 or so votes, and your annual levy at the moment we calculate to be just over £3,000 a year is what the properties that you have that will pay into the bid there. We're just working with the clerk on a baseline statement that really just protects the level of investment that both organisations put in year on year, and finding a smarter way that we can look to sort of have those regular meetings to make sure that we're delivering what the businesses need, but also what fits in with the city plan. And next slide, thank you, is just the key dates. And my last slide was just a quote from the hospital, who we've been working closely with on the Salisbury website, and just really reiterate sort of our role in city management and collaboration. And that is everything from me for now. If there's any questions or queries, please fire away. Sorry, Susie, anything to add? Okay.
Thank you, Robin, for the presentation. So before, obviously we have to vote on that one. So before we do, can I put it forward to the councillors to say a few words? Anybody wishes to say anything? Tom, yep.
Is it possible to ask a question as well?
Yes, I'm sure.
Just so and perhaps just a procedural one as well first, if I may. So are we voting today on going forward for the vote? I see the ballot opens on the 3rd of October.
Yes.
Can- Tonight, the council needs to agree how the clerk is instructed to vote, because the clerk would fill the ballot paper.
Okay, so I'm happy to just start by proposing that we vote to continue with the bid.
Yep, seconded, yep.
And then if I can then go into asking a question. That's okay. So thank you. You were talking about collecting of data and figures and so on. And obviously we've, as you also note, taken several hits over the last few years. And I think, every town has obviously suffered the tourism hit where there are places like Salisbury where the natural draw is tourism. And I'm quite pleased, I think, that we've done very well, I think, for UK tourism. My question really is in terms of data, how you're capturing information and what signs you've got for the foreign tourism and how that's improving. Obviously, that's a constantly evolving picture as that side of things goes in. But you've obviously had a focus on UK tourism post-COVID. So it's also a sort of question about how that strategy is moving forward for future foreign tourism.
Yep, I'll try and give a succinct answer because obviously it's a huge topic and it's quite, as Councillor Charleston mentioned at the start, it was a big discussion at the last place partnership around sort of more the wider international tourism. And obviously there's we collect the footfall of the city, which obviously that's just people counting. We capture spend through the city. We don't capture the breakdown of tourism, international tourism, but other partners in the city, such as the cathedral and some of the close partners, will have a better capture of that information. There are also sort of national, international surveys and work being done, but it's quite a topical time as the sort of the changing landscape of how tourism marketing is delivered, not just in Salisbury, but across the country. There's various reviews being done. So I think at the next place partnership meeting, one of the conversations is around what is the funding, what is the budget for that sort of local international tourism, because whilst Salisbury partners are putting some budget in, it's nowhere near enough at the moment. So we need to look at, a larger budget to do that.
Can I just?
Please, Ad.
I chair the experience pillar that comes under the place partnership. And as part of that, we collect data. We've just started this year to collect data when we have a big festival. So we've got Taste Salisbury coming up. And at the end of that, we'll ask all our partners around the table to give us the data that they have, which in the case of particularly Wiltshire Creative and the Cathedral, they will have data on overseas visitors. So we are trying to add that to the information that we already collect as the bid.
Councillor Phyllis, you wanted to say something? Or you?
Thanks, Chair. No, I was just going to second Councillor Cormier's motion.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Nettle.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of your team for what they've done over the years, and certainly more recently with security in the city, but also to focus on Experience Salisbury, because I can remember post Novichok and then COVID, how we wanted to get a message out of a single platform of where all events across the city could be captured. And I think the Experience Salisbury, or What's on Salisbury, because that's an easier name, has done exceptionally well. And I'd like to congratulate the team for that. Certainly going forward, I think there's lots of exciting things that we as a council with the bid and perhaps and other partners can do, because tourism is an important factor here, but so is our local neighbourhoods, our parishes around us. And as you've seen in social media, that anything that disrupts people's everyday lives, like the River Park project, and we'll hear more about Fiston Street, which are excellent schemes in the round, cause disruption for businesses and residents. And my fear is that we need to be looking at how we can maintain those people coming into Salisbury, and that they don't just see Salisbury as an issue and therefore a no-go area. We've seen that once before with Novichok, and people have habits, and once they start shopping elsewhere, they'll stick to elsewhere unless we can do something that encourages people here. So as we move forward, I think as a council and working with you, I think we need to look at these issues, what might work to entice people in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Muse.
Thank you, Chair. I first say it's nice to see you all. One of the things that really annoys me, because I've lived abroad, is that I cannot think of a single restaurant or pub or anything that has foreign languages. It's all in English. Yeah, if you could lean on the larger people, maybe Fuller's, maybe the others, if tourists walked past the window, and we tried it in one of the local businesses, it didn't matter what the cost was. The fact they understood what they were going in to eat in their own language, they went in there. Even the maps around town, they're only in English. We're not, there's nothing in German, French, Spanish, Italian. We are a tourist city. You've got the cathedral, you've got Stonehenge, but we seem to be ignoring. Now, I'm putting this as maybe a project for you, because I'm sure you can get it funded by the larger companies.
Yeah, no, interesting points, and I'll certainly have that discussions with the hospitality business, see what sort of feedback they tend to get, if that's a common query. So thank you.
Anna Corbyn.
Thank you, Chair. With all of the bids up and around the country, has there been a direct comparison with something the same size as us to be able to directly show that our recovery is doing okay post-COVID? Because a lot of our residents are very unhappy because they feel that there's so many projects going on in the city that are hampering people coming here. But if you could actually start publishing the data to prove that another place of a similar size with a bid, that we are no different, that might be a bit more useful, so that they can actually see that we're not doing that bad. I think after September and October, when Bradbeer's opens and we get Primark, I think our residents will start to feel that things are moving, and if the weather stays nice and they can continue doing the River Park project and the other things at a pace, and if people were actually visibly seen working in Fisherton Street, which is something that people keep griping about, then I think we would actually probably feel a bit better than we do. But thanks for all the work you're doing.
No, that's really useful point. I'm just looking at some figures here for August. So August, just for while we're on the public sort of record here. So August, footfall was up 8% year to date compared to 2022, and the UK is up 5%. So Salisbury is outperforming the national average. And for the month of August, so August 23 versus August 22, Salisbury footfall is up nearly 6%, and the UK is only up 1%. So, but there needs to be context. We're always around figures, but it's positives definitely.
So we'll just take the one last question from Councillor Sample.
Thank you, Chair. People have a tendency to talk Salisbury down, to do it, to undersell us, but as several people have said, it's a great city. It's an international city, really, to visit. Hugely important, the cathedral and our proximity to Stonehenge. It's also a safe place to come. And despite the fact that we went through the unique circumstances of Novichok, that is a long way behind us. And we need to keep reiterating that Salisbury is a safe place to visit. It doesn't help that we still have in place notice by Public Health England that if you didn't drop it, don't pick it up. This means that a whole raft of very responsible largely elderly, but not exclusively elderly, including some Duke of Edinburgh's people, are unable to pick up litter when they see it dropped. And even a little litter can give a wholly disproportionate impact on the overall feeling of this being a tidy city. How do you feel about, as an organisation, about the prospect of asking Public Health England to lift that advice?
Sorry, is that question directed at ourselves, Councillor Apple? Yeah, I think it's slightly out with the bid's actual remit. I think it's probably more a discussion with the local authority, Wiltshire Council, around the advice they're given. I'm not quite sure the sort of impact we would have on that matter. Susie, any thoughts on that?
Not really. I mean, we'd obviously support any call to have it lifted if it was safe. I mean, you know, we have to bow to other people's better judgment on these things, but certainly it would seem that a length of time has passed and that maybe it could be revisited. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hocking.
Chair, thank you. I think I sort of agree with Paul. It's probably time it was lifted, but given that we live in risk aversion central as a country now, where it's almost impossible to do anything without someone saying, oh no, you can't do that. Much as I'd like to see it listed, I think it's going to be slightly more difficult than just asking the question. The only point I was going to make was we were talking about tourists, especially international tourists. One of my contacts at Salisbury Cathedral spoke to him a couple of 3 weeks ago, and they said they have had more international tourists this year than they've ever had. So that bodes well for the football, I think, through the rest of the city. So Novichok and whatever, the word is out there that Salisbury is a safe, beautiful place to come to, and our foreign tourists are taking advantage of that in their numbers. Thank you. Robin, completely support your bid. Thank you very much. I think you and the guys do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, councillors.
Do we vote on it? We have to vote on it. So we have a motion and been seconded. So, yeah, sure.
So I'll restate the motion for completeness, that the council continue to support the bid and instruct the clerk to vote yes in the ballot.
Are we all in support? Yeah, it's been proposed and seconded.
All those in favour?
So all in favour?
Unanimous. Unanimous.
Well done. Right.
Can we make sure that that is recorded in the minutes as a unanimous vote?
So, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Councillor Temple. Right, agenda number 12, Wiltshire Council and Highway England major scheme in Salisbury. Update by one of my favourite officer behind the scene is Paul Shaddock.
What, the favourite bit?
So, yeah.
Good evening, I'm Paul Shaddock, I'm Senior Traffic Engineer at Wiltshire Council, and I've come to give you some updates on two highway projects that the council is involved with at this point in time. I'll start with the Salisbury Future High Streets Fund update, and we'll get on to what I would think is more interesting one at Harlem Generator in a second. If we can go to the next slide, a brief overview of the Future High Streets Fund. Future High Streets Fund is a central government programme that Wiltshire Council bid to for funding and it's aimed at revamping and reshaping town and city centres to encourage more visitors and to encourage their sustainability over a long period of time. In 2021, Wiltshire Council bid for was awarded just under £9.4 million worth of funding from the Future High Street Fund to develop a range of projects in Salisbury. I'm going to give an update on two of those, which are the Fisherton Gateway and the Salisbury Station forecourt improvements. Next slide. Some very brief project overviews at this point in time. Fisherton Gateway has got a value of £3.2 million, and it's looking at improving or improving the footways, widening the footways along Fisherton Street to make it easier for pedestrians and visitors to walk along Fisherton Street and get into and out of the city centre. We'll also be looking to include, and it's the first time we're sort of looking to do this in Salisbury, pedestrian priority across the side road junctions. That's very much in line with changes that have recently been brought in with the highway code, where pedestrians now have priorities as they cross over the side road. So this is designed at making sure that if any motorists needed that reminder that they need to give that priority to pedestrians as they cross the road there. And it's also aimed at making Fisherton Street look a little bit more attractive than it does at the moment. Certainly one of the benefits of the footways, I'm sure, as you've all walked up and down there, people quite often have to step into the road to let other pedestrians pass by. So we're hoping this scheme will sort of just make it better to get up and down the road and ultimately get into the businesses that operate down there. The Salisbury Station forecourt is a £5.3 million scheme, and it's aimed at making the forecourt a more attractive and accessible place for visitors and residents. And it's obviously part of visitors coming to Salisbury and the route along Fisherton Street and South Western Road, which is included in the Fisherton Gateway scheme, obviously provide a key route into and out of the city centre. Next slide, please. Why Fisherton Street and Station Forecourt? Over the last 25 years, which as of yesterday, I've actually been here for 25 years at Wiltshire Council. So I've been around for most of these things. There have been significant improvements to the High Street, Blue Ball Road, Queen Street, Market Square, New Canal. But one area that's not had any significant improvement over that time is Fisherton Street. As I said a few months ago, Fisherton Street is one of the key shopping and nighttime economy streets in Salisbury. It's, frequently very difficult to walk along at the moment because of the narrow pavements. And it also forms one of the key first and last impressions of people coming to and from the city centre via the train station. So all in all, looking to improve that route. We hope it will make it a much more welcoming place, much more easy place to walk along, and encourage visitors to both come to Salisbury and stay in Salisbury for a longer period of time, ultimately. Gateway, next slide. Very difficult to see on the screen here, but it's all of this information is up on the Wiltshire Council website, and I guess will be included in the minutes of the meeting. This is just a high-level overview plan of what we're doing along Fisherton Street, and it just backs up what I've said a second ago. We're looking to widen the pavements. We're looking to put the pedestrian priority across the side roads and planters, trees, particularly around the Water Lane area. That will be the most noticeable difference, or one of the most noticeable differences on the ground. We're looking to introduce a priority working system there, which allows more, by building that footway out to such an extent, it allows more seating to be provided at an area that can be quite nice in and around the river area there. I'm not going to dwell too much on Fisherton Street because, picking up on Councillor Corbyn's comment a second ago, work has started. It will be getting there soon. We're doing all of the highly useful, important things, but you don't see much happening at the moment. We're doing the trial holes and locating the services because obviously we want to make sure we don't cut off anybody's BT, water, gas, and all of these other things. So in the next few weeks, you'll start to see considerably more work taking place on site once we've got all of that set out and worked out. The last thing I'll just say on this particular slide, and we can come to questions when I've finished this part of the presentation, is I'm aware that there's a lot of comments on social media that Fisherton Street is going to remain one way at the end of this. It is not. It's going to go back to two-way. For a number of reasons. Mainly, it's one of the key bus routes out to Bemerton Heath and that side of Salisbury, Wilton as well. But we have to do the work safely. So the option was close the road completely, which was never going to get support from anybody to do that. So I think just for clarity, it will be coming two-way again once the works have completed in Fisherton Street. Next slide. Construction works, as I say, are underway at the moment. They've been undertaken by the council's new highways contractor, Milestone. It's one of the first major jobs they've done for the council. And we started construction in August 2023, and we're looking to finish in summer next year. There will be a 2-week stand down period over Christmas. It also means that right at the height of the Christmas party season, people can hopefully get in there without having everybody working day in, day out at that particular period in time. There's a couple of links on there where you can find the information, such as the plan that was on the screen a couple of moments ago. And we are putting weekly updates as to what we're doing, where we're going to be working in the next section of Fisher Street, and what works we've got coming up for the week ahead. So they can be accessed via those links. I don't know if you want to do questions about Fisher Street now before I move on to the forecourt, or I can do them all at the end. It's
Councillor Thomas.
Really a question, it's more of a comment. But firstly, can I congratulate you on being a Wiltshire Council officer for 25 years? I've always very much appreciated your speedy replies and your sheer immense knowledge, local knowledge, which is always very, very helpful. Now, what I'm going to say, I have no real in-depth knowledge to back me up, but if I was a trader, a shop owner down Fisher Street, walking into town on the left-hand side, I would imagine trades dropped off quite considerably. All the pedestrianisation, all the people are walking down the other side of the street, and I just wonder whether is there anything that can be done to speed up that side work being completed, and is there any help for them on that side?
In terms of speeding up the work, it's something we can go to the contractor and talk about. I think ultimately, as I say, at this moment in time, there is access to all of the businesses on both sides of the road. You know, you can get to every business, and that will remain throughout the course of the works. In terms of doing it quicker, once we've got through this setting up period, you will see, I think, an increase in the work taking place on site. But I think it's important to remember that we have engaged fully throughout this process with the Fisher Street traders. They knew what was coming. They understood the traffic management plan coming into this. They're working directly. One of the things that we have as a council is a clerk of works who goes in and sees the businesses on a weekly basis, and they've been very helpful in making sure they continue to get their deliveries, and they get the deliveries in the right places, and that will continue. But I would say the businesses of Fisher Street know if they have issues where to come and how, and we will look to do whatever we can to help them in the short term.
Councillor King.
Thank you, Paul. I don't know that I would agree that Fisherton Street has the most footfall in Salisbury, as one of the consultants told me at the consultation meeting, because I've been walking down Fisherton Street for the last 30 plus years into town, and most times we walk past all the shops actually because we're trying to get into town, or we're trying to get to the railway station, or from the railway station into town. But that's beside the point. I'd like to ask two questions, please. Could you tell us when this work would be finished, when it would be completed? And the second thing is, when will the other side of town, Exeter Street, Catherine Street, be renovated too? Thank you.
In terms of footfall, I know it's a point that you made. We do have sensors in Fisher Street that record the data, and when we looked at it, there was over 1 million people walk down Fisher Street past Central 11 outside the United Reformed Church. Whether that makes it the most walked place in the city centre, I wouldn't argue or look to argue at this point in time, but it is a very busy route. At this moment in time, we're looking for the works to be completed in summer 2024. I think we will provide a more definite date once we've got through the stage of determining exactly where the utilities are in the street, because they are particularly a real key consideration of how we deliver this project. I'm sure just before it started, you're all aware of the gas leaks that happened in the road that caused Fisher Street to be closed for a while. And historically there have been issues with the gas main along there due to its age and cast iron construction. So summer 2024, but as soon as we've got a better programme to give you, we will share that with the City Council. And we do have regular progress monthly officer meetings to update the City Council on all of these issues. In terms of the other side of Salisbury, no plans at this point in time in terms of Exeter Street and Catherine Street. I think it was Catherine Street you said at this point in time, but it is obviously you know, I go back to the slide a couple of slides ago, you know, I listed around the areas we've gone around, and Catherine Street, you know, would certainly make sense, and you know, potentially Winchester Street as well, are areas which could be considered, I think, in the future for improvements and enhancements.
Thank you, Councillor Sample. Before I go to Councillor Rogers.
Chairman, so two things. Number one is that we asked, councillors asked for a consultation exercise to take place with the local residents and the local businesses, and I attended a very successful consultation. It was actually packed out in Fishton Street about, I suppose, 6 weeks ago. Very well attended. In fact, you know, it was literally standing room only, and it was a hot day. A couple of days after that, and I was impressed with that event and the turnout for it. Lots of questions were answered. A lot of those questions were answered by you personally, actually. I was then standing in a second-hand bookshop halfway down Fishton Street a couple of days later, looking at some books and minding my own business, and I heard a chap come in behind me and introduce himself as the manager of the project, who was responsible, I think, from Milestone, for any issues, concerns, worries or complaints which the owner of the bookshop might have. And he took some time to explain exactly who he was and gave over his card and assured the bookshop owner that he would be delighted to hear, and if it was anything urgent, never mind, you know, pick up the phone and get in touch with me, and I'll come round and see you straight away. And he said no problem is too small for us. I didn't say who I was. I haven't said anything about it until tonight, but I was very impressed by the approach that was taken by that officer, and I wanted you to pass that back. It was an excellent piece of work. Second thing, really, and one that I've written to Wiltshire Council about before, is the pretty disgraceful state of the pavements in North Street and Jews Road, particularly where they meet Fishton Street. And I've been assured by officers at Wiltshire Council that the pavements where they meet the Fishton Street junction will receive proper repair and maintenance as part of or slightly after this project. Can you confirm that that remains the case and gives some idea of when that work will be done?
I will certainly pass on your comments about the incident in the bookshop. That's not quite the right word. The meeting in the bookshop, shall we say, about that. In terms of your other query, yes, that work is still forms part of the wider scheme. It will be undertaken after this scheme has been completed. I can't give you a better date at this point in time, but it is part of it. Certainly, the works that we're doing in Fishton Street will already come round into the corners because of the raised footways there, and it's already in next financial year's programme that we're going to be doing additional work in those side streets around that. If you need any more information at this stage, you probably know this lady's name. Ray McKenzie is in charge of the maintenance programme. She's there, but yes, it is going to be something that takes place after this work, but it is in the programme to happen.
No idea whether it's before or after May 2025.
Well, as it's going to be before as we're finishing summer 2024, but that's very much a council summer 2024.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. A couple of quick questions for Paul. Obviously, it's a new contractor, Millstone, new term maintenance contract, spot tenders for this one. We're a month in. Are we on programme? Is the first one?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then the second one is the products. We scored a huge own goal with the Market Street paving, huge carbon footprint by importing the slab from China. Can you just confirm that the paving on Fishton Street is a little bit closer to home, or even better, that they're British projects?
There's a mixture of suppliers, but we are obviously extremely conscious of the carbon impact of these kind of schemes, and particularly where we get materials from. The actual paving slabs that will be used in Fisherton Street are coming from Ireland, but some of the material is coming from China around the curbs like that. Unfortunately, with these things, it is always a balance between the cost of making projects deliverable, offset against the carbon impact. But the contractor, you know, as well as the council, is looking to do things. You might have noticed in the compound, although I forgive you if you haven't spent lots of time staring into the compound. They've got you know, large solar panels that are providing as much of the power as they can for the lighting and the units that are in there. They're also using rainwater harvesting, and we'll be setting up some more rainwater harvesting. Don't want to get into this. I realise it's a bit of a subject by coming off of some of the stuff from City Hall. So they're going to put in some rainwater harvesting in there to help, and that will be used for dust suppression when we start cutting the stone and various other activities like cleaning tools and stuff like that. So it is a balance. You know, not all of the material will be local, but we are trying to get it as possible. The biggest element of it, the paving slabs, will be coming from Ireland, so a lot closer than China.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to hear that. You know, you understand that, you know, you can't just disregard the cost, but it's good to know that some thought's gone into some positive contributions.
Councillor Rogers, you always put a good question through, so thank you. Councillor Charleston.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick one. I mean, wonderful, we're talking about works on Fisherton Street. There are wonderful works that are happening on Fisherton Street. I'm wondering if there's any plans to finish off Fisherton Street, the other bit that protrudes into St Paul's.
Not at this point in time. It's related to budgets, and we, you know, it's one of those. Obviously, the overall Future High Street Fund, every local authority that bid for money had its only received 70% of what it bid for because the fund was oversubscribed. So obviously, we were looking to do a much larger section of Fisherton Street, originally going past the railway bridge, but unfortunately, that's no longer part of the scheme. But it is an area that, you know, along with Catherine Street and Exeter Street, you know, there will be other areas of the city centre that need improving, or just outside the ring road that need improving moving forward. And again, it's absolutely one that could be looked at in the future.
Thank you. I think Councillor Charleston puts a very valid question as well, because that is a big job happening on Fishery Street. And that corner, if that has not been done, it's going to be eyesore. People's going to say, why haven't that been done? So please, I understand your point as well about the funding as well, but it is important because you might as well do the whole lot, because there's going to be a question at the end that why couldn't they just do that little piece of the work? Would have been look nice, complete the job completely. So I would look into it, stretching that finance if you can. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to look into it in there. Obviously, you know, the proposals go all the way up Southwestern Road as well, so there would be a large proportion of the route down into there. But yes, I understand the comment that it would be good to do all of it, and if there is a way of doing it, we'll look into it.
End of the day, we are the one who gets the question. So why can't they finish that bit? Why didn't they spend all this money and not complete this bit? So
it is a question that will come, and you know, I think the answer at this moment in time is, you know, you will be acutely aware of his budget at this point in time. If there's a way of delivering it, we can certainly ask that question, but that's unfortunately the reason at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Hockey.
Chair, thank you. A couple of points, if I may. Paul, I didn't realise you had a footfall counter in Fisherton Street. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, we've got all over the city centre. A number are installed. I'll say this quietly. When we did People Friendly Streets in Salisbury, we installed a number of traffic sensors around there. Fisherton Street's got two, one by the railway bridge and one by there. It's not just a footfall; it counts cyclists, buses, everything.
Do the bid know about those? Okay, all right. And second question, which I wasn't going to ask, but as the bid are here, and it's slightly council related. So once we spent 3.2 million quid on the street scene in Fisherton Street, the next thing that needs to be looked at is the state of the buildings and the businesses and the property shop fronts in Fisherton Street. So I guess this is more pointing towards Robin and the bid. I would like to think that we might be having conversations with certain businesses around a new coat of paint and a bit of work on their shop fronts. Some are fine, some are terrible. And through the Wiltshire Council side of it, possibly enforcement section 215 notices on landlords might help a little bit as well. Because if we're going to spend the money making the street scene look nice, then I think all those businesses and those residents that operate within that sphere should really do their little bit as well.
Chairman, are you moving? Yeah, sorry, Vice Chairman, are you moving that as a note to be made as a result of that? Because if you are, I'll support you on it.
I can do.
Go on.
I can do.
Hold on.
Actually, no, Paul, no, I won't. That's it. I'm rambling a bit. Let me get my thoughts down on paper and we'll bring that to the next meeting. I'll figure out some proper wording. We'll bring that to the next meeting.
Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you, Chair. Back around November, I think it was 2020. So I'm going back a few years, apologies, but I was emailing about the Malthouse Lane where the building was demolished and we had the fencing up over the pavements. And the question really is one of, can you liaise with the owner of that site to perhaps get the fencing moved back off the pavement? This was the correspondence that I was engaged with at the time. It's actually quite a thoroughfare for people walking along there, and they sort of walk up along the pavement from Fishton Street and then fall into the road, or vice versa. You walk round the corner from the Maltings side and you're straight into a road with traffic that is, of course, two-way. The building works that are going on, obviously, in Fishton Street make no real overall difference to this in terms of on the top end corner, but they do make a difference as people are walking down the road now, as they're more naturally funneled towards the Barber's side of the road, and then suddenly they're walking into an immediate narrowed roadway with reduced visibility of the fact that they're about to walk into a road that's actually operational, having just walked down Malthouse Lane. So if any pressure could be put on the owner of that property, I'd be ever so grateful. Unfortunately, I know when I tried 3 years ago, or I was
Yeah,
let down.
it's because we're looking to do works in Malthouse Lane as part of the scheme. The scheme goes down as far as there. We have already engaged with the owner, certainly from our side of things. The owner of the site has not been particularly forthcoming, it's fair to say, in terms of getting back to us. But it is something that we as council are engaging with them on, and we have asked them to come and move their hoardings back out of the way for exactly the reasons that you've said. They've obstructed the footway. So it is something we're A, aware of, and B, going to be looking to do something about.
Okay, we're done. I think anybody else? Oh, okay.
Can I just ask a quick question? You're going to be losing those short-term parking spaces, aren't you, along Fishton Street with the meters as part of this project when it's finished? Am I right?
Yeah, that the existing pay and display parking bay is going to become a short-term loading bay in there. It's something certainly the traders are aware of and have supported, but there is an advantage to that to people using it. If you're popping into the dry cleaners, for argument's sake.
What's worrying me, Paul, is the fact that a lot of those shops are the pop-in type of shops. They're not shops that people are going to for a big, shop like a food store or something. And I'm worried about the impact on traders from not being able to have that almost passing stop off and quickly go in and get something. And I wondered whether Wiltshire Council had perhaps considered the possibility of making some shorter term spaces like you would have on a parking meter available just round the corner, as you go into the Maltings and the central car park there, so that you didn't impact on the trade of those independent businesses.
The loading bay that is going to be put back, so the existing pay and display parking bay is sort of in virtual sense going to remain where it is, but it's going to become a short-term loading bay where people can stop in there for 20 minutes to go and pick up their dry cleaning. And actually it will be hopefully to their advantage, because they won't have to pay for that activity, which is what they have to do at the moment by using that. So the rules around loading bays, there are rules. You have to be genuinely loading and unloading, but hopefully there is still going to be that ability to do that short-term popping in to things like the dry cleaners to pick things up in and around that area. and also that space will remain available overnight for people visiting the restaurants in there. So it's restricted between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. as it is at the moment, but outside of those times, it will remain available for. There are some residents who live in flats above the shops there that use it for overnight parking, and there's obviously people going to the restaurants along there. So the intention is that there will still be that ability to pop into those shops and do it. And certainly the traders, when we consulted with them directly, the Fish and Street Traders Group had no, I was going to say, certainly no objections to that, and if not concerns, but.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your detailed information. So I think all confirm with this.
Right, moving on to Salisbury Station forecourt. If you go to the next slide, it's a little difficult to see on the screen here for the size of it, but this is what the current design for the redesigned forecourt will look like. It follows largely the circulatory system that happens at the moment, that you come in off of Mill Road, Southwestern Road Junction, and you go around and you come back out again onto the Mill Road and Southwestern Road mini roundabout there. But we are looking to provide 3 bus shelters there, just in the sort of north or top right corner. As you look at the screen, the existing parking spaces in the bottom right of the screen are kept as they are at the moment. Sort of in the centre, you've got more of a central sort of plaza area, is what we call it in the design terms, but you'll have dedicated drop-off spaces and pick-up spaces there, the bays on the south of the sort of central island, and on the northern side of the central island there are disabled parking bays and some additional short-term parking spaces. The taxi spaces, the main ones are kept in their current position. And there will also be on the left-hand side, you can just see there's some more spaces there, additional taxi spaces in and around that area. There's a number of informal zebra crossings. So all of the ones that you see within the station forecourt are the black and white stripes. You see these in like supermarket car parks and things like that. They'll be on raised tables as well to help control speed and to make it the route for pedestrians through easier and all at the same level, so they don't have to necessarily go up and down drop curbs. There will be a new zebra crossing on Churchill's Road. At the moment, there's a very narrow pedestrian refuge island, which we're looking to replace with a zebra crossing. And there's a number of trees, benches and planters that we're looking to put in there. There's a total of 11 trees proposed for planting in the station forecourt area at this point in time. What I would just say about the proposals, it does say at the top of the screen, these are still draft proposals. We have to go through the approval process with Network Rail as the landlord and Southwestern Rail as the leaseholders for the land or the franchise holders for the railway station at this point in time. But that is a very brief overview of the proposals that we're looking to deliver in the station forecourt. Next slide. We're currently in the detailed design stage and the proposals are being finalised. We're looking to submit those for formal approval from Network Rail and Southwestern Rail by the end of this month. And subject to obtaining the necessary consents, the construction work will be undertaken in 2024. We're too early in the design process to know when those dates are going to be at this point in time. And again, there's just a link up there which will be in the minutes where you can find out more information about this project as it becomes available.
Thank you. You said it's the early part of the design. Is the local people are consulted, or do they get to say something?
We're not in the early part of the design. We're in the detailed design stage of the proposals. Consultation has been undertaken with residents on both the Fish and Street and the station forecourt scheme proposals previously. I think the one major difference from the proposals that were consulted upon previously is there was proposed to be an access ramp directly off of Mill Road, which was going to knock down part of the new retaining wall that was built a couple of years ago there. That's been removed removed from the design, and that was there to provide specific access for cyclists, but that's now going to be incorporated into the main carriageway circulatory system by virtue of an advisory cycleway. And that's part of the reason we're putting in the race tables, to make sure everybody's going slowly as they enter there, and that cyclists can easily get onto the part of the circulatory route that they're going to be highlighted to use.
Councillor Nettle.
Thanks, Chair. And Paul, thank you. Just a couple of comments. I noticed if you could go back to the slide regarding the forecourt. Yeah, on the top right hand, as you mentioned, bus shelters. Is that just for the Sarum bus, or is that sorry, the Stonehenge bus, or are we anticipating more buses from Reds to go into the city centre?
Yes.
From there?
There's 3 bus shelters proposed. The one which is called Shelter 3 on the proposal, which is the one on the sort of island roughly in the middle of the screen as you look at it, that's going to be the Stonehenge bus stop. There's 2 other bus stops and shelters proposed, and they're for other service buses to go through to divert into the railway station to pick up and drop off passengers. We are talking to Salisbury Reds at the moment about which services are going to go into there, so I can't tell you which ones at this moment in time because that hasn't been fully determined. But yes, the intention is, and it's one of the key parts of the proposals, is that improved sort of linkages between the bus service and getting people into and out of the city centre.
Well, first of all, big congratulations if that happens, because I think you've been an officer for 25 years, I've been a councillor for 20. And I think for 20 years, we've been talking about integrated transport system for Salisbury. And so if we see this happening, I think it's very exciting news. So congratulations. I do have one comment, which I think I know you're going to answer negatively, but I'm going to ask it. One of the biggest issues for this railway station is the closure of the north side of the station. And for disability, for people with disabilities, this is extremely difficult to go up the road towards the station because it's quite a steep incline, especially as school children come flowing down. I think I've mentioned salmon in the past, but it is very difficult to get up there. And as a commuter of 10 years travelling to London, I recognise that. So if there's any way that we can put pressure on Network Rail, especially with the discussions about ticket office, if there's any way we can put pressure on Network Rail to open the north side, that would make a tremendous difference to the congestion that happens just down there where you're going to put your new zebra crossing. Thank you.
I think certainly nothing as part of this project will come forward about the reopening of the northern entrance, but it is something that I know South Western Rail in particular are looking at, and I think I can take this away and confirm this. They have had some money allocated through, I think it's called the CSIF fund. I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, but it's a community investment type fund, which is to fund a study looking at options around reopen the northern entrance. So I will go away, take that away and provide you some information about it, but I can confirm it won't form any part of this particular project.
I have several councillors wishes to speak, but can we ask a different question, not repeat the same question, please? Councillor King first.
Well, you said that there's going to be a crossing in Churchwoods Road. Will there also be an exit for cars that's there at the moment, or will that be blocked off?
No, the existing exit from the lower car park at the railway station is unaltered, unaffected by it. We, in terms of the proposals, only go as far as the ramp that leads down into that sort of lower car park. But the zebra crossing is proposed where the existing refuge island is at the moment. That's very narrow and it's very difficult to stand in, particularly when you've got HGVs passing either side of you. So this will make it a lot easier and as well as providing just a better access into the railway station for the people who come that way to it.
Councillor Wills.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about 20 minutes pick up and drop off spaces.
Are you going to increase them or decrease them as a result of this project?
They are. It's difficult to say, and the reason it's difficult to say is because it's not clear how many are there at this moment in time at the railway station. There are, if you look at the signs that are there at the moment, you can use the disabled parking bays at certain times of the day to drop off and pick up for 20 minutes in there. So I think we're looking to, in terms of the ones that are dedicated as drop off and pick up bays, we're looking to retain the same number. Overall, there will be less car parking in the station forecourt as a result of putting the plaza and making the footways wider, accommodating the bus stops in there. South Western Rail are working on, as part of their contribution to the project, as part of a partner on the project, they will be required to deliver replacement parking, and are looking to do so at Eastern Goodyard at this point in time. But they are quite early in that design process there. So in terms of the pick up or drop off, it should be the same numbers, but there is more discussions around parking to be had, I think.
Looking at the existing plan there, where the bus stops are on the far side, there's at least 3 or 4 pick up and drop off places there. And coming back to the point about the north side, if you had pick up and drop off places on the other side, that would alleviate the congestion, because it does get quite difficult, and you have queues of traffic backed up and taxis can't get in and out, and there's all sorts of chaos at peak times. Certainly interested to see how it works, but certainly having the buses following a prescribed route is going to make it a lot better.
Hopefully, yeah. It's difficult because it's a car park where, with trains running late, and there's all kinds of variables that make it, or can make it quite a difficult space. But hopefully, the one thing that the proposals will deliver is, there are clearly defined spaces for disabled parking, for pickup, for drop off, for buses. So if, and this might be a big if everybody follows the rules and the markings that are put in, it should work a lot better than it does at the moment.
Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation, Paul. I've got a few points, and I'll be as quick as I can. First of all, it's great to see that expanded double layer CCTV protected cycle storage that's been implemented by Wiltshire Council and South West Rail as part of the project. Bike to rail has been seen as a fantastically sustainable transport alternative, and may help to contribute towards lessening the traffic chaos at peak times, which was iterated by one of my fellow councillors. My second point is, with the untimely demise of co-cars, co-bikes, are Wiltshire Council and South West Rail actively looking for a replacement electric bike rental partner at the moment? And if so, has there been any progress?
Short answer, yes and no. Yes, South Western Rail are actively looking at it. At the moment, it's their contract at the railway station with them to do it. It is something that they are talking to our transport planning colleagues, or my transport planning colleagues at Wiltshire Council around, as they're the ones who were looking at sort of rolling out e-bikes in Salisbury City Centre with co-bikes like that. In terms of has there been any significant progress? No, because I think obviously the process of them going into administration is still being worked through. So yes, it is something they are looking, and just anecdotally, though, the e-bikes there were very well used. They're a very unscientific way of telling by just how dirty they were. Whenever I went and was looking at the station forecourt, you could see they were being taken out and being used. But yes, hopefully they will find a new supplier and have some bikes back there again as soon as possible.
I have one final point, if I may, Chair. You mentioned about the, did you say there were changes to bike access to the station?
Yeah. Yes. Alongside the parking spaces that are on the bottom right corner, there was originally proposed to be a shared use path coming up off of Mill Road. It was quite a steep ramp, and there were a number of concerns, particularly around, pedestrians sort of not having great visibility from a security and a safety point of view. So what we did in the previous version of the proposals was we've removed that ramp, and certainly cyclists will now have a dedicated cycle lane. So in essence, we've brought cyclists up the Mill Road shared use path. They will come round the corner just where the zebra is in the top right, and then they will go into a an advisory cycle lane, but it's clearly marked, it will be clearly delineated for them, and then they will come round and be able to filter straight into the cycle parking hub that's been built at that location.
Great, thanks. I'm not much of a fan of advisory cycle lanes, but I suppose something is better than nothing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Charleston. Did you put your hands up? That's good. Councillor Sample.
I'll go first. I mean, I was going to ask mostly the same questions as Councillor Bayliss did, so I'll withdraw my question.
Councillor Sample.
And several people have asked what consultation has taken place on this. Why isn't there more money available to finish all of Fishton Street? Sam's asked that. So have you. The reality is that this scheme has been a long time coming. The reality is that, and there may be some people in the room who remember this, one of the last acts of the outgoing Salisbury District Council was to sign a joint strategic plan for Salisbury called the Salisbury Vision. And actually looking around the room, there are only about 3 or 4 of us who were actually there at the time. But back in 2002, 2009, we sat around the table, Labour, Liberal Democrat and Conservative councillors, and we agreed a strategic plan which was supported by Salisbury District Council and was supported by Wiltshire Council. That's one of the reasons why we should have a strategic plan for the city, and the next administration at Salisbury City Council will have a strategic plan for the development of the city. I can promise you that. That's one thing that will start from day one after the elections. We will have a strategic plan taking Salisbury forward. So this has been consulted upon over a period of something like over 10 years, and it's been a long time coming. But the plan that you see here and the plan for Fishton Street are very, very similar to that strategic plan that was signed off by Wiltshire Council and by Salisbury District Council and by all of the political parties at the time. So I'm very pleased to see it coming forward. Of course, there are going to be some issues of detail where there are problems. Why isn't there enough money? Well, the reality is we can't do everything because the government has changed the funding agreement. It was a lot more grand than this. There was a lot more in it, and a lot has had to be cut out because the council decided, or the Wiltshire Council decided to reduce the amount of money. Central government decided we weren't going to get what we thought we were going to get. But I want to thank those councillors who are still here. Ian, I think Ricky, I think Jeremy, for having the foresight to sign up to that great scheme, the Spire, the vision for Salisbury. And I think over the course of the next couple of years, we will see more and more of that scheme, that vision coming forward and being developed. And it was because we involved local people and local councillors that it will be a success.
Thank you, Councillor Sample. I'll just take one more question because for benefit of Councillor Blackwell, although she finds it very difficult to sit down. So we're going to take 5-minute comfort break after the last question, Councillor Muse, very quickly.
Thank you. Can you just enlarge the map so we can see the bus stops? There we go. Right. Big problems. If the single bus stop is for the Stonehenge tour bus, it's 40 foot long. With 72 people on board, it's 18 ton. It will not get round that corner. It will certainly not get round that corner if the bus stops are full of bus replacement buses. At the moment, you can't even turn the bus round up there. You have to reverse. So I would ask that you actually look at the bus stops again. I know you're talking to Salisbury Reds, so I know their management. I doubt if any of them have actually driven a bus up there. But that, to me, at the moment, as I've driven them, and trust me, if that is to scale, I know what's up there. You will never get a bus around that corner, particularly if you've got other buses and particularly the replacement buses taking up that particular area.
I think there are 2 issues within that. when we do this kind of design work, we run vehicle tracking. That actually allows us to do sort of any of about 1,000, 1,500 different vehicles to track around there, from the biggest coaches, HGVs, and certainly if you can just zoom out, the whole route round, following buses, following the whole circulatory route, they can get in and out of those the bus stops fine, including the Stonehenge one in there. Certainly the bus company, again, we have regular monthly progress meetings with them, have seen the plans and have raised no objections to that, and have seen the vehicle tracking and are happy with what that is showing. I think the rail replacement thing is a different situation. In terms of the largest coaches, which South Western Rail and Network Rail have advised us that would use that, they can make that turn, they can do it. Obviously, with rail replacement services, it's going to be a bit more of an unknown situation of how the whole car park will work, and it is something that we will have to continue working with Network Rail and South Western Rail on to see how that can be delivered. At the moment, it's and I think you alluded to it, it's a very interesting situation. You have to do a multi-point sort of turn, reverse, shuffling mover to get around there. So I think generally the access for the larger vehicles and the buses will be improved. But quite how it works with the rail replacement thing is something I think we still need to perhaps consider a little bit more.
So, yeah, very quickly, yeah.
Very quickly, I suggest you jump on the Stonehenge tour bus yourself and go and have a look. I still reckon that if there are buses parked where your bus shelters are, you won't get a bus around that corner. Yes, they shunt. Yes, they reverse. That's dangerous. You've got pedestrians. You've got pedestrian crossings. It has to be seen that there should be a route for the buses that causes less danger to the pedestrians in and around the station.
It won't cause any danger to pedestrians. Buses will come in and follow the one-way system. So they'll come in on the lower half of the access route, go right round to the end and turn around. There's quite a big turning circle at the end of the road, so they will always come into the bus stops front on. Into there, they will have no need to turn around any of the bus stops. They will have to follow the full circulatory system like all of the other vehicles do at the moment. And the turning circle at the western end of the plan is specifically designed to make sure that those buses and rail replacement vehicles can turn around that way.
I'm sure that is the case, but giving the benefit of the doubt of one of the councillor who's also been a bus driver, I think a practical feel for it would be quite good if you can have a.
Again, obviously, you won't get a feel. I suppose I will take that back to the designers and see if we can do anything. The only thing that you could do in the short term is potentially look to trial it as a coned area. But certainly, the vehicle tracking that we've done shows that this will.
That might answer the question as well. So, are we okay to take 5-minute comfort break for Councillor Blackwell, because she does have some problem sitting down too long? Is that all right? And we'll come back again. And I think it would be fair to give the public a benefit of the chance of asking a question should you need to afterward. So shall we come back at adjourn for 5 minutes? can we all come back to our seats, please?
Did it give you them? And there's those two, put them in diary.
Yep.
But I'll do it now.
Thank you.
Saturday, September the 16th. St Michael's for 11 o'clock.
Excellent. I'll put that in my diary. Shall I come up wearing my chain or?
Councillors, can you take your
Yep.
seats, please?
Yeah. No, because what, the idea is I can either come.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman's ready to start the meeting.
Yeah.
It's also in Ed and Jeremy's diary.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, fine.
That's fine.
I have Councillor Rogers. Shh. I have Councillor Rogers to say the final question. Oh, you've got Councillor Hocking as well, yeah. Go on, Councillor Rogers. Councillor Rogers. Ricky, you're going to say something? No? Okay.
Can I just remind all councillors to speak with your mouth close to the microphone and don't move your head away? It makes it very much more easy for people at the back to hear if you keep close to the microphone whilst you're speaking.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Hocking.
Okay, final word on this one from me. So to reiterate my comments around buildings, having spent £5 million at the railway station, I'm expecting some reciprocity from Network Rail and South West Trains that they also do something with their buildings to bring their frontages up to what their passengers will now be able to see when they come out of their building. Just to note. Thank you.
So we're almost done. Is it same? Yep. Okay, Paul. So now we go to the Salisbury Junction improvement.
Okay, second part of the updates is about the Salisbury Junction's presentation. Could you just drag the image up a bit? It's sort of got a bit sort of skew-whiff on the page if you can. But the Salisbury Junction scheme is looking at the Harlem Gyratory and Exeter Street roundabouts with the aim of improving capacity and traffic flow through the junction in there. You may recall that back in, I think it was 2021, consultation was undertaken on improvements to Harlem Gyratory and Exeter Street roundabout. They were not met with a great deal of support from local residents, and in particular, one of the things that residents didn't like about that was the intention to signalise Exeter Street roundabout and introduce what we call at-grade crossings. So they're crossings that take place at road level rather than, say, using the underpass that exists at that location. So in terms of the current proposals, we're not looking to make significant changes at Exeter Street roundabout. We're looking to make some changes to the lining to make it clear that you can get 2 full circulatory lanes around the roundabout. And we're also looking to make a small tweak to some of the sizes of the islands, particularly the one at St Nicholas Road, to make it a bit easier for, in particular, Bishop Wordsworth pupils crossing to get to the playing fields off of Britford Lane. You can go to the next slide, it's where it gets a bit more interesting. As we come down Newbridge Road, the intention is to create a third southbound lane. When you get to the existing traffic signals just past Britford Lane, once you go through those signals, there's already 3 lanes of traffic at that point. So what we're looking to do is create a third lane as far down as Newbridge itself. We're not looking to widen the bridge because that would be hugely expensive and very, very disruptive to look to widen that. So once you go past that bridge, we're looking to provide a third lane, and to achieve that, we're looking to move the existing cycle lane that is on the footway over into the green space that the City Council own at this location. We're also looking on that stretch of the path to make that cycle lane wider, up to 6 metres wide in places, to meet with current design standards and also to allow for future increases in use around potential developments or existing developments, and also things like the Salisbury Heat project. as we come down towards Britford Lane, and so as we come south along the road, we're looking to relocate the bus stop from where it currently is to where the third of the blue sort of text bubbles down is at that location, just so that you get it's further away from the cycle route at that location, and it's further away from the junction with Britford Lane itself. The other thing we're looking to do at Britford Lane junction is we are looking to create a pedestrian and cyclist priority crossing across the side road. So that will be a raised table coming across there. One thing to highlight with the proposals as we're looking there, obviously we're looking to move the cycle lane over into the green space, but we have weaved it through the trees, and one of the reasons for moving the bus shelters was to allow us to weave it through the trees, so we don't have to remove any of the mature trees that are in that area with these proposals that we're looking for here. The third lane at this point essentially replaces the existing footway and the existing shared use path that cyclists and pedestrians can use. Excuse me. As I say, that allows us to maintain all of the mature trees. Some of the newer trees, the saplings that were planted 2 or 3 years ago, will have to be relocated. Hopefully we can translocate them, or we would replace them if we had to remove them and they could be translocated. If you could go to the next slide. And then as we come to the gyratory itself, we're looking to carry on the improvements to the cycle lane down as far as the existing crossing by the petrol filling station. Alongside of that, we're looking to provide some new toucan crossing points. One in particular, we're looking to sort of relocate or slightly change the route around the gyratory for pedestrians. So instead of having to cross to the middle and walk by the large grass central area, you would walk over on the top side by I forget what that open space is called, by the top of the Ayleswade Road sort of open space there. So the crossing route round, so it's just to the north of that that screen there, would be different at that location. And then by the Coombe Road and Downton Road arms, we would be looking to introduce an additional crossing point on Downton Road to make it easier for pedestrians and cyclists to cross there. And also upgrade the existing facilities to two toucan facilities. A toucan facility is one where pedestrians and cyclists can stay on the footway and press the button and legally cycle through or use those crossings. And that's to link up to the existing shared use path, which runs along Coombe Road and then goes down by Woodbury Gardens. So that's a very, very high level overview. The benefit of providing the third lane, and we'll come on to this in a second, is it allows us to change where we can queue traffic at the gyratory, which will allow us to rebalance traffic signal timings to improve capacity through the junction there. If you go on to the next slide. So we've done some fairly extensive traffic modelling. We collected data in May last year. This was after traffic levels had returned to pretty much normal following the whole COVID situation and the impact that had. Certainly, the data showed that traffic at that point was back to its sort of pre-COVID level. So we've modelled a morning and afternoon peak. So, you know, the busiest times of the day for traffic going through the gyratory. We've included all of the development sites up to 2026 in the modelling that we've done so far. I'll come on to sort of modelling and sites that are included in the next couple of slides. Southbound traffic has been prioritised as has been shown to be the predominant traffic direction in terms of flow of traffic. And what there are 2 tables which show the preliminary journey time savings that we achieve with the proposals that we're looking to do and how we can rebalance where traffic queues and how the traffic signal timings will work as a result of that. It's a little hard to tell if you can't see the screen particularly well. But basically, we think we will get an achievement, you know, we will achieve improvements on pretty much all the arms, morning and afternoon peak. The only one where there's a little bit of a a sort of extra time it will take to get through is on the Coombe Road to Exeter Street in the afternoon peak there. These are very much preliminary findings, and colleagues or partners from National Highways are going to be talking about work they're looking at in a moment. And I think you can see that there are some where there is scope, I think, to sort of look, can we get it so that afternoon peak on Coombe Road is also a reduction rather than a very slight increase in journey time through the junction. So these are very much preliminary results because there is still work to do with the design, and we are working with colleagues at National Highways who are looking at measures around the A36. So we need to make sure that that what they're looking at, what they're modelling, works with what we're looking to model, so that our proposals complement each other. So there will be some more tweaking and work to be done on these modelling results. If you can go to the next slide. At the moment, these are the development sites that are considered in the existing modelling, which takes us up to 2026. So the existing sites are allocated. This plan is from the Salisbury Transport Strategy refresh. So basically anything that was in there that was allocated is included in terms of growth and impact that it will have on the two junctions. If we go to the next slide. I'm obviously conscious that the local plan has recently been announced, and it's proposing additional houses, or proposing additional housing allocation sites that will have potentially have an impact on traffic flow through the gyratory. So what that shows is, at this moment in time, we've not done any detailed modelling for them, but we have applied strategic growth rates. This is how sort of national transport planning works, that using government data that we can apply to that to indicate what the level of growth will be on that road network. So there is clearly, there's going to be some thoughts and concerns around that, but it is part of the additional modelling work we're going to be looking to do at that location. At this point, that's the next steps. We're sort of at the detailed design stage, and we're moving forward to complete the detailed design in early 2024. One of the biggest design considerations we have is the diversion of the existing utilities. That's gas, water, and everything that's sort of buried in the existing footway. A lot of the utilities are buried in the footway, so that when they need work doing, they don't actually hold up the road. So if we widen into the existing footway, we need to look to divert those utilities. As it says in there, the cost of doing that and the length of time that takes has a big impact on the deliverability of this scheme. So that's something we haven't quite got to the bottom of yet, and what the impact of that will be. So that is something we're working forward and working through as we go through the detailed design stage. We're going to sort of continue to consult and engage with key stakeholders. We're already talking to the City Council, and you are actually the first people to see the plans tonight, as the first stakeholders to see the actual revised plans. But we're also talking to the bus company about the improvements we're looking to deliver. We're talking to the heat project, and we're going to be talking to walking and cycling groups, and one that is not listed on there, sort of nearby residents that will be impacted, that will hopefully see the benefit of these proposals as well. Moving forward, we're going to be providing regular updates to the Salisbury Area Board, and we'll be putting more information onto the council website, including some of the plans that we've shown here. Before we go into questions, and I'm sure there will be some, there's a couple of videos which I'd just like us to play if it's possible. These are the modelling output videos. There's one that shows a very brief period in the morning and a very brief period in the afternoon of how we expect the junctions to work. This is the morning one. It's going to be quite difficult to see on the screen, unfortunately, but we will make this information available later. It will zoom in a second. On the left-hand side of the screen, as you look at it, is the existing situation based on the modelling data and the traffic surveys we had undertaken in May last year. This is, on the right-hand side, how we expect it to operate as a result of the extra lane, and where we can balance the traffic and allow traffic signals to be reprogrammed and retimed to accommodate that. There's no commentary, I'm afraid. It's not muted. That's it for that one. And there's one showing the afternoon peak. And again, same left-hand side is the existing situation, and the right-hand side is the benefits we expect to achieve with the proposals. That's it in terms of the videos. So I'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you. Councillor Riddle.
Thank you, Paul. First of all, did I understand you to say that the viability of this is not necessarily confirmed and that it depends upon the costs of diverting the utilities, yes?
It's something we're trying to work out. The cost of the utility diversions could be or will be very expensive and quite extensive, this location. I think, as with everything, budgets, we're governed by budgets and what can be afforded. I think it's important to note that the previous scheme we were looking to apply for government funding for, and this is a scheme that Wiltshire Council will be funding in its entirety. So we have to make sure that we can afford whatever we're looking to do. But I think I wouldn't get too worried about that at this stage, because on any scheme of this size, we have to work out what the impact on utilities is going to be and what that impact then has on us about that. So I think it's in the interest of sort of being open and honest with you, it is one of the big factors that we need to look at as we move forward with the detailed design to see how the scheme can be delivered.
Yeah, because the previous scheme didn't really stand up to a cost benefit analysis, did it? That's not necessarily all your fault. I appreciate that. I'm very worried about this. I'm very cynical about the whole thing. We have got hundreds more houses feeding into the Harnham Gyratory than have been allowed for in the period to 2026. The uncompromising attitude towards the large scale of this housing development has been shown by the Wiltshire Council leadership suggests that they're not going to back down for any reason. We're going to have a new roundabout on the Coombe Road to take the incoming traffic from the hundreds of houses up there. I just really can't. We're going to have more. We're going to have not just the hundreds that are already permitted on the Netherhampton Road. There's another scheme in the pipeline for the garden centre. There's site 6 on the Downton Road in the East Harnham ward. There's the new housing development, which is already permitted on the Odstock Road, and that's going to be the best part of another 100 houses. And I just don't really find it very easy to believe that diagram showing me that the queues that we already have on the Netherhampton Road, Harnham Road, coming into the Gyratory, for example, are going to disappear by changing the traffic light timings and adding a half the road's length of extra lane coming up from the bridge to the Directory on the other side, for traffic going the other way. I don't think it's realistic. I think I don't know how to put this, because you should probably wait till you see the impact of all that housing before you design a scheme that's going to try and deal with it. But if you do that, you've got a nightmare in the meantime. But I'm just totally unconvinced by it. I can see that you've done your modelling and that what's built by 2026. Okay, you could make that argument, and it's your job. It's not mine. I can't really argue with you. But all this extra that is to come on top of that, which council has said very firmly will come, it's going to make it an absolute nightmare. And I don't think that basically half an extra lane on the southbound approach to the Directory is going to cut it.
I think there's a couple of issues within that. I think, as I said, the local plan sites that have recently been announced, there's still the inquiry process to go through with that. And, I'm not, involved with the local plan in that level of detail, but, you will have a chance to comment and be involved in that inquiry process. So there's no guarantee that those sites will actually come forward once that, once the consultation and the full local plan inquiry process has been completed. I think the rest of it, we have to deal with it the best that we can. We're trying to deal with the situation to 2026 at the moment, and as I said, we are looking at what the impact now those sites have been announced is going to be on the modelling. The scheme designed at the moment deals with the current situation up until 2026 and is likely to need to change again in the future. I think there will be an onus on, if those sites do come forward, on Wiltshire Council, the City Council, officers, members, to make sure that we get appropriate measures from those developments to address the impacts that they have. That's going to be a key consideration moving forward. But at this moment in time, obviously the proposal is mainly focused on 2026, but we acknowledge that 2036 and the extra houses are going to have an impact on that, and we are looking at what that impact may be.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I think you've got a hard nut to crack here, to be honest with you. I can see the logic actually in the extra lane coming up from Exeter Street roundabout to Neverhampton Road, because I think because basically that's the turning right lane in it. I can see the logic in that. I don't like the fact we will lose some more open green space, but I can see the logic. I don't like the aspect of taking away the verges going down Downton Road. But yeah, I don't like that. But my biggest problem, well, firstly, I don't think this is going to make a substantial difference. When you see how clogged up that place gets now, especially Monday before last, I think there was an accident or something. It was an hour for me to get from Old Blandford Road, top of Old Blandford Road, to Middle Street. Traffic is just queues all the way down Harnham Road, Neverhampton Road forever. But the problem I have with this really, though, is if you are driving along Harnham Road, Neverhampton Road, when you get to that Directory now, often the filter lane, if it's not peak hours, the filter lane going left is empty. People are trying to go across the Harnham Directory to go up to the hospital or go down the Downton Road. And that is stopping people, I say not peak hours, that is stopping people getting in the filter lane on the left to go down Newbridge Road and into City or to Southampton Road. And there's nothing, what it needs is a slightly extended filter lane or left lane. You understand what I'm saying? It needs a slightly longer one. I know, again, you're taking away verges, but you do need something there, because quite often you're queuing to go into town. And the reason you're queuing is because traffic wants to go across or up to the hospital. And I don't see anything here that will relieve that. But the problem is actually there's huge volumes of traffic coming along that road now, and it's going to get worse. And I'm not so sure this is going to achieve anything. But of course, as I said at the beginning, I think, whatever you do, you're going to get slammed by everybody. So it is a really difficult situation you're in. I accept that, or Wiltshire Council or Highways England's in. But I think something more substantial was needed. but then I'd probably, it might be difficult to support what was more substantial, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, we did look at whether we could extend the left turn filter lane as you come from Harlem Road around into Newbridge Road. It might be something that we need to look to do if the extra housing comes forward in there. The modelling that we've done so far, and again, if you look at the modelling in a slightly more close-up thing, it does have an impact on that, certainly around the peak times when the biggest congestion happens at that site. Extending that left-hand filter lane is difficult because you may recall you've already got the crash barrier there to stop things going down into sort of Ayleswade Road and things in that area. So I think you sort of alluded to it, I think in some of your comments, you know, one of the biggest constraints we have at that location is space, and where we can, you know, widen and do things, particularly with, you know, Highlands Road and the big banks on either side. It's very much on a bit of a ledge there. I think at this point in time, we're not looking to extend that left turn filter lane because the modelling work shows that it's not required, but it doesn't mean that it will never come forward as an option.
Thank you. We've got two more councillors. I just want to echo something, that although the current modelling that you have shown, and I think Councillor Rideau is right, after all the development has taken place, that model will simply not stand because of that traffic flow. So I think, you know, you are too early trying to pitch something that will go horribly wrong once all the development is done. So you really should consider the modelling after than now.
I think, sorry, just to come back on that, I think as I said, we are looking at the modelling and what happens after, you know, 2036. That is something we're looking at now. I think, you know, Councillor Riddle touched on this. You know, there is going to be an issue of, you know, when does that housing come along? You know, it could be years away, and it's do we want to do something to address the situation at the moment, which is already, I think most of you would agree, causing issues in and around Harlem Gyratory and accessing the city centre from the south. I think, you know, I'd refer back to what I said a second ago. If that housing does come forward as you know, through the next phase of the local plan, then there will be an onus on the, you know, councillors, officers, everybody alike, to make sure that we get those developments to put in appropriate measures to deal with their traffic thing, you know, with the issues that they may cause. But, you know, it's very early in that process to say what that's going to be when the sites are only, you know, it's not been through the inquiry, and it's not definite that those sites will make it through the inquiry and stack up through that process. But I think, as everybody said, and as I've mentioned, we clearly need to have that in our thinking as to what we can do and how we could potentially introduce other improvements moving forward. I think it's sort of been touched on here. Other improvements might have to be much more substantial than we're looking at now.
Okay, Councillor Hocking.
Thank you, Chair. Lucky me, I've got site 6 and site 8 in the local plan, and now I've got this. I'm going to be a spectacularly busy little councillor over the next years. I can see it coming. Disappointed you didn't build in a BMW lane across the Gyratory.
I'm open to offers.
That I'm with Annie and Ian a bit on this as well. The point about houses being built out on the west side of Harlem, the houses are there. They have planning permission. They are being built, and that is the best part of 1,000 houses. When you take site 6, site 8, and a few oddses, that's another something like 600. Whether site 6 and site 8 will stay in the local plan or not is anybody's guess. That decision's still yet to be made. But if they go forward, that's the best part of 1,600 houses plus, all of which are going to have to deliver their kids to school on the other side of the city, all of which are going to work somewhere else. And if it's in the city, it's going to be Churchfields or wherever. So there is going to be an enormous increase in traffic at the Gyratory. And I think Ian makes a good point that there should be an extended left-hand lane from Harlem Road turning left into Newbridge Road. And I think we should do it as part of this bill, because if we don't, we'll see this project through, and then we'll think, do you know what? I wish we'd done that when we had a chance, because that's sort of what we always think. And then we'll have to go through the whole thing all over again. New project, new funding, new traffic modelling, new everything. When we could possibly have fixed the problem before, and it can be done. There is a bank. It's only engineering. Yeah, so it's not like it can't be done. And as for traffic coming from the new estates in West Harlem to the gyratory, a lot of those people are going to be going out of town as well. So they'll be going either down Newbridge Road and then through the city or around the Ring Road or whatever to get where they were going to go. At least as part, I mean, guess what? The Brunel Link Road springs to mind straight away, because that will take the traffic off the Harlem Road. It takes the HGVs off the road going to Churchfields. It stops them going through the city, yada, yada, yada. It stops them destroying all the houses along New Street and all that sort of stuff. But if we're not going to build a road, the least we could do is build a footbridge, cycling bridge, so people who do work there and want to go in the city can actually go from the estate straight across the river into the town. So I think those are two things that we should also be looking at as part of the scheme. And I know it costs money, but if we get it wrong, it will be another decade before we're able to put it right. So my plea would be, can we please try and get it right first time round? Thank you.
I know it's certainly not a footbridge. We are looking at plans at the moment for upgrading Town Path as well, and that's something that is being developed alongside that to provide a better route in, which hopefully will help with some of those issues. But we're right at the very start of that project. In terms of the left-hand filter lane, I'm happy to report those comments back to my colleagues on the design team and look at it. I think, as I say, as I said about a few moments ago, at this moment in time, in terms of the problem that we're looking to deal with, we don't need that. But I'm very conscious, we included the slide in the presentation about it, that we have got these extra houses on the horizon. All I can say is we'll take that back, we'll have a look at it, but I'm certainly not going to guarantee that we will provide that filter lane or an extension to that filter lane as part of this project.
Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much, Paul. I think you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing with this. I think we're in a situation of induced demand. So the more roads you build, the more traffic you'll have to fill those roads. Until we actually move away from this car-centric model and have a more integrated transport structure, we're not going to escape from this at all. We need better, more affordable, more frequent bus services. We actually need to make the park and ride work, as was basically stated in Local Transport Plan 1 from 2011, I think. But there's been very, very little appetite to do that. It is good to see that measures are being put in place for walkers and for pedestrians and cyclists in terms of raised crossings. I think many people are still unaware of the changes in the highway code from last year, changing the precedence of pedestrians and cyclists. Did you know that if you turn left into a road and there's someone wanting to cross the road, you have to wait for them to cross? I bet a lot of people don't. So that was the highway code last year. I think this is a big problem. I think the fact that developers basically don't provide alternative methods of getting into town, like walkways and cycleways, and only do the bare minimum, doesn't really help. And even when they do something, it's disjointed and not joined up. So I can see there may be some very, very short-term improvements in this, but I think ultimately we're just going to be looking at the same issue in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. Thank you.
Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. My thoughts on this is that we always moan about infrastructure coming in too late. At least this is a start of it. I agree with what Ian said about extending the slipway, it's necessary. You have to start somewhere, but you do need to make the developers take their part in responsibility. And also, can we please stop having these silly management companies? Can it be adopted roads so they are proper standard and everything else, because it really doesn't work in any other model.
Sorry, if I could just come back for a second.
What I would like to see is Wiltshire Council consulting the city councillors for Harnham. It doesn't happen. We're there to be the voice for our residents. I welcome the idea that you mentioned about improving the town path, but equally I'm aware that some of the funding schemes that you can apply for that amount basically to driving almost a roadway across town path to make it wide enough to fit the criteria of the funding schemes. And I don't think that Harnham people want to see that. They say, although they might well want to see an improvement. And I do think that this is a case where it would be very helpful to Wiltshire Council to sit down and talk to some residents and representatives of people in Harnham before you go too far down the wrong road. I'm happy to attend a meeting. I'm sure my fellow councillors for Harnham, East and West, who are here, would be very happy to do that and have some proper consultation. Thank you.
As I said a few moments ago, this is the first time we've presented these proposals, and we are going to be undertaking more discussions with stakeholders about what we're looking to do, and happy to have the councillors for Harnham involved in that.
Thank you. Before we let you go, we've got Highways England, Chris Hillrop and colleague will present something. Talk to us about Southampton Road or A36. Just one question while I have you here. I've got a lot of residents actually complaining about Brown Street being very fast. Drivers are going using very speedy in a sense. Is there something that can be done?
Again, the first thing that will need to be done is a traffic survey to actually determine if there is a speeding problem in there. Brown Street has historically, it's a bit of a two-phase problem. There's no issue during the daytime. The volume of traffic using Brown Street controls the speed. There is a bit more of an issue at the night time. And one of, I can't see where she sat at the moment, one of your councillor colleagues was mentioning that to me during the break a second ago with relation to Castle Street. So I think, first of all, we can have a look at that. I think moving forward, it's difficult in terms of putting in physical traffic calming features in there, given a bus route, I'm fairly certain. And again, when we've discussed with local members previously, there hasn't been an appetite for physical traffic calming features such as speakers and things like that because of the noise and the volume of traffic bouncing up and down over them. But I certainly think the key thing is, and it's always the same whenever we have a speeding issue, is get a traffic survey done. Let's see what the speed is and let's see what measures may or may not then be appropriate to deal with that. Have you requested? If you've requested it, it will be in the process for getting that. And once we've got it, we can have that.
So we have a gentleman right at the back wishing to say something. Yep. Yep. Yes, please.
As some of you already know, I'm Darren Jennings, Harnham resident. And I will, first of all, you and I have had a conversation on the phone regarding certain issues, and I mean no disrespect to you with my comments. I'll go back to Bovis with their initial consultation with the public and everything else about 3 or 4 years ago now. Their figures, even for car ownership, were, I don't know where they plucked them from, but I got the National Office for Statistics forecast for vehicle ownership, and there wasn't an awful lot that developer said that actually was true. The only thing that's come to fruition really is that the developer stated that it was going to be a 7-year project just on the 640 homes. Whether that's changed since the inception, I have no idea. That brings us, considering they started building this year, to 2030. We then have 106 homes roughly on the north side of the Netherhampton Road. And considering that's been built on a floodplain with the housing strategy and sites that have been identified for allocation, I think that it's pretty disingenuous to sort of turn around at this stage and say that they probably, we can't take them into account when we're looking at traffic surveys and everything else. Bovis ended up having their own traffic surveys on the Harnham Gyratory, and even by their own admission, they said by year 3, it's going to be over capacity.
That's just on 640 homes. That's without the other 106. That's without the 86, 87 that have gone to the Booker site. That's without the additional 84 to 87 that's going to be by in excess, and the 250 to 260 that are also going to be proposed as well. The Harnham gyratory, you've got really, as far as I can see, why is highways or anybody else to deal with our road network reactive? Instead, we have a real opportunity here to be proactive. And I think that you need to take into account the worst case scenario. And I'm echo a lot of the councillors' views here that technology is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't always get it right. And I promote road safety. I teach road safety, and I'm a Harnham resident. That place is absolutely hateful at the minute to negotiate, and all it's going to do is get worse. At the moment, you've got a new roundabout that's been built for a development that's only had a couple of bricks laid. It's still unsurfaced. There's no signs there to say a roundabout's on the approach. Nobody's forced them to put any signs there. And there's about a 6 to 8 inch dip for ramps, and there's not even any ramp signs there. So if highways or anybody else that's responsible for a road network can't even get that right for a major developer, I hold out no hope that we're going to end up getting the Harnham gyratory right the first time round, the second time round, or even a third time round, if we don't take into account all of the additional housing that's been sites that have been allocated or even proposed at this stage, because based on historic development plans and approvals, it's going to go ahead no matter what. And I think that although that it's budget constraints that are going to be limiting to a certain degree, I think that it's going to be a huge waste of money if we go ahead at this stage and we try and sort out the initial issue, when especially the proposals, they simply don't fit with what your proposals and your traffic management surveys have currently come back with. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I mean, there's some interesting comments now. I think the easiest one to deal with is the stuff at Netherhampton, the roundabout. If there are issues with the signs and signs being missing, I can take that back to the development control team and managing that development and overseeing that development, and we can have a look at that. I think a lot of the rest of it is unfortunately for you, repeating what I've said previously. I understand that, you know, the comments that you're making. We've got up-to-date traffic modelling data. That's why we redid the surveys in that, and there's the slides show all of the sites that we've included in the modelling up to 2026. What it doesn't include, so that does include the growth from the Netherhampton ones that you've mentioned and the other sites. I think you'll find the phrase in the presentation is called windfall sites. So these are ones that weren't necessarily included in the original Salisbury transport plan and local plan periods that come forward, like I think the Booker one and things like that. So we are including that. I think one of the big issues that we're having to deal with now is look at this extra site and what the impact on those proposals are. And again, I can only reiterate, we are looking at what that modelling is going to show us needs to happen for 2036. But I think, you know, there is, you know, the difficulty is going to come back to what we can afford to do at this point in time and what we're looking to do. So I think Councillor Corwin mentioned it. We're trying to make a start on looking at what we can do with this, but ideally, if there was an unlimited budget, we could do a much bigger scheme and have a look at it.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, money doesn't grow on trees. We all
Yeah.
know that. The only other point that I would like to make,
I'm conscious of time.
but yeah, I think that nearly every other resident around Salisbury will tend to probably agree, is that it's a real strange coincidence that whenever the lights are out, obviously they're more reliable now with the LED traffic signals that went in, and we were assured that even those traffic signals, the timings were going to be changed and it would make an impact. I've seen no impact so far for the positive. All I've seen is negative. But the only impact that I see that's a positive is when those lights do not work.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Comment number one that comes to the council, we can make it. I think though, you know, it's a common conception that they work better when it's not out. I think the reality is they work better for short periods of time, and the same is said of all of the roundabouts around the A36 as well. I think if you had it long long term without the signals there. I think, you know, people having to constantly give way to let traffic come through, and particularly with pedestrians crossing, I think there would be safety disbenefits for having that. But just picking up on one of your other points, I think that what we said was we've replaced the traffic signal equipment, and we've tweaked the timings within that. This is where we're looking to make those significant changes to the timings. We can alter where traffic stacks and how it can move around the gyratory. So at the moment, when we replaced the signals, it was tweaks rather than significant changes to timing, whereas this would be much more significant. So I would hope to see, you know, you would see some benefit as a result, and it would be much different to what's there at the there at the moment.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Can we hear from the other officers who've been patiently sitting down in the back? If you can kindly introduce yourself and your colleague.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, everybody else. Quick introduction, because I'm looking around the room. I do recognise a number of people from the area boards, but for those that haven't met me, Chris Hildrup from National Highways. I'm a stakeholder manager with responsibility for Wiltshire, and my colleague Paul Warner is a subject matter expert in safety and modelling. I'm very conscious of timing for your meeting, and you've got other items on the agenda. But what I would like to say is thank you very much for inviting us along to give you an overview of what we are looking to do on the A36 from the College roundabout to Peters Finger. We are active, National Highways are active throughout the city, but I think for this section we'll focus very much upon the junction improvements as per the heading under which Paul was introduced. Two things that I would like to raise, leading on from what Paul said about the traffic light signals. One project we're looking at doing is improving the traffic lights throughout Salisbury, moving away from an analogue system, moving towards something called MOVA. I don't propose to talk at this time of night about traffic signals, but that is the latest iteration of digital signals, which will help as we put it through the city. That will certainly help with traffic flow. So that's one of the projects that we're involved in through Salisbury. What we've come to present to you tonight is an overview, as I said, of what we are looking at doing between the College roundabout and Peters Finger, the A36 there, for which we're responsible. We have worked very closely with our colleagues, as Paul said, in Wiltshire Council, because we are very, very mindful that whatever we propose and introduce has got to complement what is going on in the rest of the city. And as we've just heard, there are a great many sort of complexities to that to get right. But we, as people around this table have said, you know, we have this opportunity to get this right. And what we are looking at doing and the money that we're looking at spending is to make that stretch of road fit for purpose as best as can be, to take us sort of forward for the next 10, 15 years, potentially more. So having said that, if we can, I'm struggling to read that, so I'm sure in the back of the room you'd really be struggling. But if I can hand over to Paul to explain a little more about our.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I know that some of you have heard me talk about this before, so please forgive me if I'm repeating myself. We do also have some new information to give you as well. As Chris has said, we are looking at the A36 from the College roundabouts. If we're heading east, next at the Tollgate Road junction, we're also looking at all of the retail park access points. We then come down to the Bourne Way roundabout, to the Bourne Retail Park, also looking at that roundabout. And finally, we're looking at the new Peters Finger junction as well, and we're also looking at the approaches to all of those junctions as well, probably over certainly over a couple of 100 meters as well, to get an idea of how traffic moves towards those junctions. So that's the extent of the model there. To answer a couple of questions that I've heard put forward earlier, we have done extensive traffic surveys. We are very confident with the survey information that we have. We are modelling up to the year 2033, so 10 years from now. We have taken on board all available information about housing developments across the whole of Salisbury. We have applied that development traffic to our model. We have also applied nationally accepted growth on top of those developments as well. So we feel that our model is extremely robust. We have taken into account all levels of development, and we have some very good results, and I'll come to those towards the end of this presentation. Certainly College Roundabout is, and I'm sure you'll agree, a congestion hotspot. We agree with you on that. So we have looked at a number of different options to improve this roundabout. These will involve some additional lanes through the roundabout north-south and also around the roundabout as well. So we will have to enlarge the roundabout if we are to reduce the congestion through Salisbury. We are looking at making the through lane, continuing the through lane from the A338 north. We are providing additional turning lanes from the A338 turning right into the A36. We're also providing additional lanes for the A36 southbound, whether that be continuing south to the A338 or turning left onto the A36 Southampton Road. The modelling has now been completed not only for this roundabout, but for all of the A36 that we are looking at. And whilst I can't go into details, we could be here for quite a few days. We are seeing some significant improvements at this roundabout. To put it into context, as I said, we have growth all the way up to 2033 with all of the housing developments that are proposed, and we are seeing better, we are seeing reduced queues, and we are seeing better journey times than you currently experience through that roundabout. So taking that 10 years plus all of this growth, we are confident and that we have a robust model that is giving us correct information here. I could go on to, one of the other things I just note is that we're also considering to put in a crossing, a pedestrian crossing to the north of the roundabout. There's a blue dot, apologies, it's not very clear there, just there, which will provide people with a safer method of crossing that road, especially students to and from the college, going back in towards the town centre, and also local residents who wish to access all of the retail parks along the A36 there. So we are looking at all users, not just vehicles. We're looking at pedestrians and pedestrians of all ages and all abilities, whether they be a disabled user trying to cross the road, a cyclist, etc. We're looking at everybody through here. We could go on to the next slide, please. One of the next junctions we're looking at is the Tollgate Road junction. Again, we are looking at a number of options here. The option of signalising is providing probably the most benefit here. It will also reduce, we believe, the amount of rat running that you will get from the A36. Forgive me, I can't remember the name, but the junction further north from College Roundabout. You get a lot of people that rat run through there. We also understand that Wiltshire will be looking at possibly putting a bus gateway through there. So we are looking, and we've listened that there is rat running through there, and we are trying to reduce that level of rat running. But we are also mindful that residents live up and down Tollgate Road, so we're trying to balance the options there. If we could go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. We've also, as my colleague Chris said, we've been to a number of area board meetings, and we've listened and we've heard, and we were also aware that the Bourne Road or Bourne Way roundabout is also a significant congestion hotspot. We are looking at potentially providing 2 lanes off of the roundabout as you head west, basically towards the city centre, to alleviate that issue, and potentially 2 lanes going eastbound as well between the roundabout and New Petersfinger Junction. Again, I must reiterate, these are options that we have been considering. I've now got the full report back of all of the modelling options, and I've still got to go through that process of kind of digesting all of the information that I've been given. We could go on to the next one. Petersfinger Junction, we're not proposing to do a significant amount there. Our modelling has now shown that if we reduce congestion at Bourne Way and especially at College Roundabout, traffic will flow significantly better or more freer through the New Petersfinger Junction. We will ensure that the signals are operating to the maximum efficiency through there. That's really just about all on New Petersfinger Junction. And the final slide, we've been looking for quite some time. I do quite often site visits through here. This is a very congested section of the network, and you've got a lot of people doing a lot of turning movements here, going in and out of the retail parks, for example, both on the northern side of the A36 and also to the southern side, the likes of, I think it's American Gulf, B&Q, for example. What we have found is, with the best will in the world, people slow down. It's quite human nature to let somebody pull out of the junction. The problem then is that the car behind you also has to slow down. The car behind that slows down. You then get a platoon moving all the way back along the A36, feeding into the roundabout, College Roundabout, for example. So one of the options we are also looking at is the signalisation of the retail park access points, so that we can control when people come out of those retail parks, so that they are not causing significant or as much congestion as they currently do with the A36. Again, it's a balancing act. We don't want to create huge queues inside the retail park, but as you'll appreciate with from National Highways, our primary goal is the A36, the movement of people, goods and services along that road. We are trying to balance out both for local residents and for through movements on the A36. As I said, we've now got the modelling report back. So appreciate it. It's quite a large report, and I've only just started to go through it. We have, I'm going to put this, we can make significant improvements here. Some of those improvements will mean widening. I know that's sometimes not what people want to hear, but there will have to be some widening at certain points along the A36. I also appreciate one of the other speakers from the public said about reducing car ownership and reducing car use. We, as National Highways, that is not within our remit. We have to look at current traffic congestion and also move that forward to 2033. I think it's also important to note that the vast majority of traffic on this road is local traffic, not through traffic. Therefore, there has to be a wider discussion about the use of traffic locally, not just from, say, Southampton to Bath, for example. I think that's probably everything in a very short nutshell.
Thank you very much. Councillor Toms.
I have to say a lot of what you just said I'm quite happy with, which is nothing I normally do say. I've always been amazed that you're on a trunk road and yet you're subservient to people coming out of the Tesco's shopping area, right? So you're held up because of people who've gone shopping. And I thought trunk roads, you know, you have the right to, you know, almost the priority over everything else. And it's always annoyed me in the part. But what does slightly cheese me off, and there's always a however or but, is that a lot of developments along there, and you take the McDonald's site, you know, popular as it is with people, but when people opposed it, Highways had no objections to it, right? And that is what cheeses me off when they got awarded costs because we objected to extra traffic because of McDonald's being built. And the reason Wiltshire Council got sued for costs was because the Highways Agency and the Highway England hadn't objected to that application. Now you're saying a lot of that traffic's local traffic, which I accept. So it's traffic using those shops and using McDonald's, and without naming McDonald's already have. But the point I'm making is if you had objected to some of that in the previous past, then we wouldn't be in half the problem we are there now at. I mean, I think we should have widened the roads at places. I think we should have filter lanes. That's what really you're doing there, isn't it? And I'm happy with the traffic lights. But I just wish you'd objected all those years ago to half the developments that have taken place along there.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Councillor, yeah.
We, as National Highways, can object, but ultimately planning permission is granted by Wiltshire Council, and we are just one of a number of statutory consultees, and we ultimately cannot stop a development that's within the planning framework.
That road's been over capacity for donkey's years, in my opinion, and I think it's probably true. You would agree that there's been over capacity along that road forever. If the Highways Agency objects to something, that normally kills that development, right? And there never has been an objection along there. And as I said, when Wiltshire Council did object to McDonald's being built there, the reason it got awarded, the reason McDonald's won in court and then Wiltshire Council had to pay the costs was because one of the reasons the councillors who voted against that being built was because of the traffic flow along there. And of course, when councillors aren't professionals in terms of traffic management, it was because had the Environment Highways England objected, you know, there would have been less of a problem along there. So I know it's not your fault, and I understand that, but it does peeve me when over these years people have been arguing about those developments taking place there, and never has the Highways Agency ever objected to any development along there. And now you're telling me a lot of it's local traffic. That local traffic is caused by those developments.
A significant amount of, no, let me rephrase that. The vast majority of traffic on the A36 is local traffic. Now, that's people coming in to work in Salisbury, going out from Salisbury, or simply going shopping at the retail parks, etc. I suppose ultimately, if we'd objected to everything, there wouldn't be anything there. So there has to be
We-
a balancing act with all of this.
We are where we are at the
Yeah,
moment.
and we are
Yeah.
where we are.
That's right. But I think Councillor Toms makes a very valid point. We don't want to argue at the moment, or we're not blaming each other. But at that time, I was a new councillor as well. Salisbury City Council as well as Wiltshire Council has certainly objected to it, but the McDonald's developer found a leeway as Highway Wiltshire Council at the Highway England at that time said, no, that's not going to be a problem. That is the reason we lost. We lost a significant amount of money as well as the land that they were going to award us. But anyway, we are where we are, but it's a shame that we are coming to this. But the local council at that time, we were right. We were made the correct decision, but we've been overthrown. Anyway, we've got Councillor Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's another difficult situation.
Yeah.
There's no easy solution with Southampton Road. What I do want to say, and just thank Chris and all of his team, you know, this is probably the best bit of collaboration work between Highways England and Wiltshire Council we've had in 10, 12 years. You know, so this is what I can see, some real opportunities to make, if people drive properly, some improvements. So, you know, the easy thing to do is do nothing and just let us moan for another 10 years. So I think we've got to be a little bit optimistic. You know, we've got some positive proposals by some professional people. Let's let them get on with the job, and we'll measure the outcome once it's done.
Yeah, certainly a step in the right direction. Councillor Bliss.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm very interested in this. Is basically all of this in my ward. I'm going to be nice to you because there's something that I really think is a good idea in this, and that's that pedestrian crossing on Churchill Way East. It's a racetrack out of hours, basically, that stretch of road. One of my residents has actually written a bot which is on Twitter, which monitors the speed, and it's not uncommon to see a lot of cars in excess of 60, 65 miles an hour. So I think if we put in that pedestrian crossing, anything that helps slow down the traffic will be a definite benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that comment, because we were actually challenged as we were leaving the last area board meeting by an irate motorist who thought it was a ridiculous idea. And I informed him, not on my watch, am I having students that bob their skateboard down to get across that road? We're having a proper crossing. So thank you for that.
Okay. Councillor Sample.
Chairman, I support the scheme. It's not without faults, but it is doing all the things really which we as local county councillors wanted to do. When we were first elected back in 2021, I think 2 years ago, one of the first things that we did as new Salisbury area board members was to ask for a working party to be set up to look specifically at the issues around the A36 College roundabout through to Peters Finger. And the reason for that was because we all understand the enormous impact which the dysfunctional, I suppose is the best way to describe it, system of traffic lights doesn't operate on this important stretch of road. And the result of that dysfunctional traffic light system not working is that we get enormous amounts of tailbacks as far back as Wadden and as far back as Wilton Road as a result of the slow progress of traffic through here and the low volumes of traffic that this particular stretch can take. I think we all agreed at that first meeting that the opportunity for Salisbury to have a bypass is long gone. That is uneconomic. It's not something that any government is going to deliver, given the constraints that there are on public spending at the moment. And so in the absence of that proposal, we have to do something practical over this stretch of road. And the system which is being proposed by the Highways Agency, Ricky quite rightly says we have a very good relationship with Chris and his team, is to introduce MOVA. Now, MOVA assesses the traffic flows approaching each arm of the junction and then calculates which arm should be allocated, what green time, and seeks to determine a set of signal timings which will maximise the throughput of the junction under the current conditions. That is what the scheme means. We go from dumb traffic lights to intelligent traffic lights, which can see what the traffic flow is going to be and can create a traffic flow according to that. The end result of this joint working should be not an end to all of the delays and the stacking of traffics back along the A36 in both directions, but it should significantly reduce it. And that's why I support it. As I said, not without criticism. There are some areas of detail which we need to get right. But in general, this should lead to reduced delay times along this stretch, and importantly, significant reductions in nitrogen dioxide, which is a major cause of asthma and lung disease in Salisbury and South Wiltshire.
Do you wish to respond, or shall we move on? Councillor Jeremy? Yes.
Thank you very
1
much.
minute. Can we listen to the councillor first? Can we listen to the councillor first, because he was first, and then I'll come back to you, sir. That's okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I agree it's great to see this joint working with the Wiltshire Council, the local MP, and everybody else that's been involved. So thank you very much for that. It's always interesting, isn't it? And it's no surprise that when you have two dual carriageways and you put a single traffic carriageway in between them, that you're going to have constriction and congestion. I don't know of any other road where when you have dual carriageways and then put a single lane in, that you don't get this, and people seem to be surprised. Interestingly, with the new technology, when I saw this presentation, I liked it, and then I thought, surely there is something else here that you can do. So this used to be, of course, some of us will remember in Salisbury, this used to be 3 lanes, highly dangerous middle lane for overtaking. But surely, even by keeping the cycle lane as it is, instead of having 2 cycle lanes, why couldn't you have intelligent digital traffic signs for people coming in and people going out? So in other words, at critical times, your exit from going out, because as you say, a lot of it's through, so traffic going out in the morning could be 2 lanes, and coming back in the evening could be 2 lanes the other way. And I'm sure that could be, and I just wondered if part of your research has looked at that model.
Thank you. Good comment. I know of only one location where that happens. Effectively, there are some remote control bollards. In the morning, there are 2 lanes into the city, and in the evening, the bollards all move over and there's 2 lanes coming out. I only know of one location that happens, and that doesn't happen in this country. We could not do that here simply because there is not the legislative background or safety studies in the UK for that to happen. It is a good idea. I think it could work, but I have to be honest and say it isn't going to happen here.
Thank you.
But thank you.
We have to extend the time in next 3 minutes. We can quickly hear the gentleman. Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you. Let's hear from the officer about the responsibilities.
Sure, your sentiments are probably quite commonly held, but you know, we are bound. You've identified the problem there. We are bound by contracts with our contractors. We are bound by budgetary constraints in terms of the number of times that they are able to go out. We have a massive network to maintain, you know, and we have to give. I appreciate what you say about your fine city, but we have to give the same level of service right the way across our network, unfortunately. And that dictates that we have basically 2 cyclical periods of maintenance per year. Unfortunately, Salisbury's a reasonably unique situation in that it has an SRN, a strategic network road, running right the way through the city. There aren't many other cities that have that. And of course, city environments do attract probably more litter. And again, that complicates it with us because, like I said, with that twice a year cyclical maintenance program, unfortunately, I feel that the litter is allowed to build up perhaps in Salisbury. So I share your sentiments, but there isn't an easy answer to just close that road and get our contractors out there.
That's the statement. So I do understand about network tailoring work, but when you've got a closure on, as you frequently do, to do a pothole or some lines down the road, whatever, why isn't it joined up fingering? Put some contractors at the same time and deal with the problems there. Because let me just put it this way. Do you ever actually go out and contractors going to clean those central reservations at all during the year? Because the size of the trees in a normal year, they could grow that high. And that's the point I'm really making there. There's no care at all attached to the ring road, but I'm not on the meeting. You've got lots of.
That's fine.
That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak this evening.
You're very welcome.
I think getting short change by my agency.
So,
If you take that back, I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much, Nick.
thank you very much. Now we have come to one of our 3-hour timings. So we need to extend. Can I have the 1 second, Councillor Tormin?
I was happy to propose half an hour
Yeah,
extension.
half an hour. Are we all okay? I agree. But okay. So we have a proposal. We have a seconder. Show of hands, please. Carry on for half an hour. Okay. Okay.
Could I just ask, have you finished with us for this section?
We got 2 more questions. There's a lady at the back and the Councillor
If we could
Corbyn.
deal with those before you have your break, because I'm
And Councillor Hocking. Very quickly, please. Very good point. Thank you. Thank you very much.
In response to that, we do get emails, and I'm not sure if that lady there is somebody who's emailed us, but we've tried to respond. The yellow hash markings were never meant to be there in terms of the set of standards that Paul talked about earlier, the design manual, roads and bridges, etc. They're not meant to have yellow hash markings at that sort of roundabout, which is why they haven't been reinstated.
Okay, Councillor Corbyn.
Lovely, thank you very much. Just myself and Councillor Wells alongside each other, we were just having a little chat when Councillor Nettle asked about the middle lane and intelligent middle lane. And I think there might be something at Lincoln, and Councillor Wells thinks there might be something in Manchester, just putting that out there for something to try and Google search or whatever for Lincoln and for Manchester as possibles. My question actually, or my comment, is about the pedestrian crossings, and it also ties in with the Wiltshire Council Harnham Gyratory and such like. Really, anywhere where you tinker with pedestrian crossings, it's great to encourage pedestrians to be able to have safe crossing points, but the crossings, when we're talking about the time management to try and keep traffic flowing, if they're not quick enough, if the crossing doesn't act quick enough, then car drivers will see pedestrians and will just assume that the lights probably won't change, so they keep up a fair bit of speed and are not so hesitant approaching a crossing. And also, of course, pedestrians, when they're forced to wait too long, will give up with waiting, and they'll think, well, this crossing's not really worth its salt because I have to wait so long for all this traffic to pass. So my point is really about the prioritization. You know, we've been talking a lot in this meeting about traffic flows being the priority. But if a pedestrian crossing doesn't actually serve a pedestrian's needs by being quick enough, then actually it puts the crossing out of effective use, because pedestrians will just run across the road at that point. Thank you.
Very quickly to that, as with traffic signals, technology is moving on. There are signals now where if you see them, they have radar detectors mounted up at the top, and they can detect the movement of the pedestrian. There will be sensors in the road, obviously, to determine the speed of a vehicle approaching that set of signals, for example. So if you or I come up to the signal and we press the button and a car goes past and, oh, there's a gap I can get across at that point, I feel I can get across safely. If I go across, the detector will know that the pedestrian has walked across, and will then actually cancel what is called the pedestrian call. In other words, the green man. It will cancel that and just continue the traffic on. Likewise, if you push the button and let's say it senses a vehicle approaching at 40 miles an hour. Okay, can the lights change safely to get that vehicle to stop in time, or should we allow that vehicle to continue over the crossing and then vehicles behind it will then stop? So again, it's a much more modern system. Unfortunately, they do cost a great deal more, but those would be the types of signals, crossing points that we will put in. They would detect both the vehicle and the pedestrian and work together so that it minimises time for the drivers and also for the pedestrian. And one other thing is also it will detect the movement of the pedestrian across the road, and it will actually extend the green man time. So if there is an elderly person or somebody who is slower getting across the road, it will give them more green time, not just 10 seconds and then that's it, so the traffic's going. It will then give you maybe 15 seconds to get across the road. So it's adaptable in real time.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hocking.
Last word to me again then.
No.
Thank you, gents, for coming again this evening. I so want us to do something on the stretch road. I live on Tollgate Road, so I live this every day. And even today, it's a Monday, and it's 11:30 in the morning, and I've got cars queued up right outside my house, which is half a mile back from the junction with Tollgate Road. So anything we can do has got to be a help. On widening some of the junctions into the retail units, I'm really pleased about that. In fact, what I'd probably like to add is I'd like to widen both sides of the carriageway all the way from the Alderbury bypass to the College Road roundabout, actually. That would be my idea of widening the road. Because I'm in the local resident, Mr. Jennings, I'm in his camp when it comes to traffic lights. And I know people poo-poo it, and I know they say, oh, it doesn't, but as a 16-year veteran of the Harnham Gyratory, when the lights fail, the traffic congestion goes away. Like that, blink of an eye, it fades away. The same has happened on St. Mark's roundabout recently. Traffic lights went out, traffic congestion melted away. Whenever the traffic lights fail on every one of those 3 roundabouts and the Gyratory, the traffic problems melt away. So that's just not Mr. Jennings saying, it's not me saying it. I'm Councillor Rill will probably back me up. So will a ton of other councillors, and so will thousands of residents. They will tell you on that school run at the Gyratory in the morning, when the lights fail, the traffic congestion goes away. And the last point I'd like to make, the pedestrian crossing, the blue dot on the map up there at the top, there is a subway under there. We know that, don't we? And I'm not a fan of putting pedestrian crossings on dual carriageway. And for that, so we had a similar discussion with Wiltshire Council Highways when they were proposing a similar thing on the Exeter Street roundabout. Given that they were going to put a pedestrian crossing across the carriageway right over the top of a perfectly good service underpass, which, by the way, we've just painted out and it looks utterly brilliant.
Thank you.
So that pedestrian crossing, I would please park that. Thank you.
Thank you. You show very quickly, Councillor Cleona.